Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Revamped. Today we're going to be covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 3, Episode 12, Helpless. Aired January 19th, 1999 on Buffy's actual birthday. The first time they did this because her birthday is actually January 19th and it aired on January 19th. Super cool correlation there. And then it was written by David Fury and directed by James A. Courtney. Entitled this episode in my notes, The Episode with Another Birthday from Hell. Because that's exactly what was going on. But also last year, we remember Buffy's birthday did not go well because Angel was turning evil and all of that. So this secures the second year in a row that we've had Buffy's birthday. Just goes to shit, you know?
I like the pause in between.
Well, I had to think about my words. Regardless, in this episode, for Buffy's 18th birthday, what should be a milestone of celebration twists into terror when her Slayer powers begin to fade, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Turning to Giles for answers, she learns he's been secretly drugging her as a part of an ancient Slayer rite of passage, a brutal test that pits her, powerless, against a deranged vampire in a fight for survival. The literal epitome of dun dun dun.
Truly, though.
Terrifying. Guest stars this episode, we have Jeff Kober as Zachary Kralik. Other credible roles I knew him from, he was in I don't remember how many episodes, but I know he was in The Walking Dead a little bit. And then I specifically knew him from an episode of Charmed, which I'm starting to see. I think I talk about it in one of our future scripts. The next episode that we're getting to, when I was developing that script, I made a note about how characters, they both appear both between Buffy and stuff like that. I guess the WB is just as a sister network was oh, we know these people because they were over on Buffy, let's send them over to Charmed. Or they were on Charmed, let's send them over to Buffy. You know, that type of thing. But he played a character named Jackson Ward, which him as a character was an insane convicted killer turned vengeful spirit in the episode in season 1 called The Power of Two. And the two sisters, because one of them was out of town, went to Alcatraz because they live in San Francisco to do a tour, and obviously it's closed down at this point. There's not actual
going on.
Inmates there anymore or anything. Yeah, but Phoebe or Prue, one of the two of them, sees the ghost of this spirit that he plays, and he's like some crazy fucking thing. And honestly, it just goes to show, and this is my main point, the actor channels a layer of instability that makes his presence very unnerving. And then it has thematic parallels with this episode because, like I said, he was a convicted killer turned vengeful spirit in that show. And here he is a convicted killer turned vengeful vampire. So I think it's interesting because Buffy in this episode, without her Slayer powers, her threat is Kralik. And it makes it feel more amplified because of the energy of him being insane. And then Prue is singled out in that episode where she's dealing with his ghost and puts her at heightened risk. So it's Prue and Buffy kind of parallel each other between the two shows. Jeff Kober, he thrives in both these roles because he really does destabilize character work very, very well. He plays a good, insane, crazy, mentally ridden, whatever you want to call it, person. I thought it was just interesting how for both Buffy and Prue, he becomes an external force that exploits their weakness. I did note that Charmed's episode of that aired in May 1999, and obviously this aired in January of 1999, so Buffy did it first. I think Buffering did an interview with him at one point, and I remember listening to the interview, but I think it's interesting how he played two characters that were very similar within months of each other. You know, he was like, oh, I got this in the bag for Charmed because I already played an insane guy.
How do you spell his name? I want to know what he looks like not as a vampire.
Jeff, Kober. Other guests we have on the show is Harris Yulin as Quentin Travers, and obviously we learned that he is the head of the Watchers Council. And we finally get a face to the Watchers Council because we see a little handful of these motherfuckers. And then we have Dominic Keating as Blair, David Hayden Jones as Hobson. He had a notable arc on Supernatural. I don't remember his character, but he had like 19 episodes across the show as playing Arthur Ketch, whoever that is. I don't know who that is, but you know, I was like, let me give these people some time of day. I've been actually reading on what these people were sometimes, because sometimes they're really irrelevant characters that I've never seen or heard in anything else. They're like a one-off character that appeared on Buffy, and then they probably never did anything else except for like sideline work back in the day or whatever. That didn't really take off their career. They're like, I was on Buffy once, and now I'm married with kids, and I work at Subway. You know, Subway's not always go-to for like regular minimalist jobs.
Where everyone else says like McDonald's, you say Subway.
Yeah, and I'm not hating on it, but
yeah,
you know, there's a difference between being like a doctor and working.
There's a huge difference.
And I'm very far in the lower spectrum of.
I'm closer to the Subway person.
Yep, same. I can make a mean sandwich, but I can also massage you and heal your anatomy. So, like I said, it's a midway point.
Realistically, the people that work at Subway got way more self-discipline and will than I do, because if I got a job there, I'd just be eating all the shit there. Like,
they do. They be eating that lettuce right out of the batch. Like
I had to at least be making myself like 3 sandwiches, and then they watch back on the cameras and see me taking some sandwiches and like 4 or 5 dozen cookies home, and they'd be like, all right, we can't afford to have you working here.
You're like, I gotta take this batch of cookies home. It was my stepfather Ted's recipe. They make me feel so good. I don't know, them raspberry white chocolate cookies used to be good back in the day. I
swear it's the best thing about Subway is their cookies. Like, I just want to go in there and like rate their cookies all the time.
You do be liking some cookies. Ted's cookies.
I would probably eat the shit out of those, honestly.
I know you would, especially knowing what's in them.
Band candy chocolate, probably what's in them.
Beam of corn. I forgot about that word just now. Yeah, chloroform. Okay, either way, let's talk about Helpless. I made a note to let you know, and just anybody else that doesn't know, the word cruciamentum, which is the Slayer test, is Latin for torture or torment. So it really goes to show what this episode's kind of about, and then what the Slayer test is all about. This episode, to me, feels like the second time we've seen a vulnerable Buffy, because the last time we saw her when we did our coverage back for Killed by Death, when she was sick and impaired in that episode, it is a different version than what we get here, because obviously here she's stripped of her powers versus being weak from illness. And it's inflicted on her, which makes it that much more traumatizing. But she kind of inflicts that on her that episode too, because she makes her tell, like, I mean, obviously Willow dilutes it, but she takes more of the flu to make her see Kendall again, and then she like continues that fight, so she like weakens herself again or makes herself feel like shit and all this other stuff. Now this time it's somebody else that does it to her, so it's crazy to think about it in that way. But something I really like about the episode is ultimately how it shows how far Buffy has come. And I don't know if you realize this along the watch of it, but there was a point where losing her powers might have felt like freedom to her. Like she could just step away from the Slayer role, as we saw from the start of the show, at any point in time. And now it seems like it's the exact opposite. Losing her strength doesn't feel liberating to her. It feels very vulnerable. It feels like a disconnection from who she is at a core level. And her reaction across the whole episode makes it clear too. Buffy's obviously now become fully committed to being the Slayer, which has been an arc that we've been growing towards. I really think a lot of Becoming kind of cemented that, and obviously her reaffirming her title in Anne, so it kind of calls back to that. A huge moment for her. She's obviously reached a stage where she rejects the very idea of opting out now, which is wild when you think about where she started again. And I think that ties perfectly into the coming of age theme that runs through the episode. It's her 18th birthday, the age where we all feel, oh, I'm grown up, or, you know, I can buy cigarettes, I can do this, I can do that, I can like go to clubs, I can get it. You know what I mean? It's the technical reaching of adulthood where you're no longer a minor. And with the show being all about the theme of growing up, this episode cements just how much she's embraced her calling by the time she reaches 18 years old. So she's hit that milestone. And on top of that, the episode really leans hard into the horror vibes on top of her 18th birthday, which I personally love. It's really scary. Like, I was watching you watch it. Now, anytime I've ever really watched it, even though I know what's happening, I still kind of get the edge of, like, on the edge of your seat vibe from it. And before it's revealed what's going on with Buffy, you are wondering what the fuck is happening to her. Like, where's her powers at? Like, what's going on? So it kind of almost, I wouldn't say that who done it is the right phrasing, but it carries that same kind of thing where you're like trying to figure something out along the episode.
Totally.
Like your mind's already working in that way. So it puts that aspect to it. But then obviously just to redirect it to Buffy herself, Buffy is still a badass. Even without her Slayer strength, she does exactly what Giles predicted she would. She shows cunning, resilience, and resourcefulness, all things that Quentin wanted to test her for, but we know her of. Like, we know that she already displays this without the powers in general. And she takes down Kralik with not an ounce of force, truly, but with her wit and sharpness. And that only adds to that badass factor and resourcefulness that we've been clocking from jump. So I told you, and I told everybody closed for last episode, that this was an episode for me that really was in top tier Buffy fashion for me. Like, I absolutely love this episode. And I think why is because it deepened my love for her story and her power, because like here she doesn't have it. And it's a test. I mean, not even with like a pun, because of the test that goes on in the episode, it really cements to me like how much I love Buffy and what she can overcome and what she stands for. You know, she didn't have to go try to save her mom. She can just be like, that bitch can gobble up and I have to house myself. But she chose to go for her mom. She had something at risk and at stake for her, so she had to go do it. So I don't know. It just like puts this thing for me in my mind where like it just gives my love for Buffy that much more of an enhancement and a higher amplification of just love in general for like her. Yes, an expansion. My favorite word. And I mean, I try to just sum it up because like I didn't want to write down too much because I felt like I would just go into like this long tangent about why I like this fucking episode, but also like how much we get from her and Giles. The dynamic between them, it grows. It feels like after this, her and Giles are going to be changed forever on a personal level, not so much their business side of things. But what did you think of Helpless?
I enjoyed this episode a lot, and I think it's for the same reason, because like you're saying, that we get that different side of Buffy not being as physically resilient as she can be and as we know her, and we haven't seen her like that very often. So to see her in this like very weak and vulnerable state is new ish. So it always puts an interesting kind of spin on what's going on in the episode. But yeah, it's very confusing because you start looking at it like, okay, so it's her 18th birthday. Like, is she just going to lose her powers now? You know, that's kind of what I was thinking. Now that, I don't know, maybe she's wished it too much on herself to not want to live up to all these responsibilities, and she just wants to have her normal life back, so that maybe the universe hurt her. And now that she's 18, she's like, you're welcome, happy birthday, you know. So I was going with that for a second until it became very obvious what was going on thanks to Giles. But yeah, it was weird. It was a weird mixture of emotions because, of course, like you always come from a place of loving Giles as a viewer of the show. Really, no matter what he does, he hasn't really done anything to really blur the lines of the moral compass, so to speak. So to go there with one of the most like ethical people on the show was a weird position to put him in. And I, as much as I enjoyed it, it was also very cringe because you, as a female anyway, I can't escape the thought of this happens in real life where like someone a woman trusts drugs them, you know, kind of situation. So there's like that weird, even though nothing happens and Giles doesn't do it with his own motive, it still plants that thought in your head. And I can't imagine like most females, especially not having that reflex thought, especially if they're watching it in today's age. I don't know how it was back in the 90s, but obviously, since the dawn of time, I think women have probably, or at least people have been getting drugged by other people. So it was that kind of, I didn't like Giles in that kind of position. But obviously, we see that it wasn't his own doing or his own choice. So yeah, it just was a really interesting episode, I think, emotionally more than anything to unpack because it was super layered. I still love the show because there's so many pockets of funny where they just like throw in little things that make you laugh, so it never becomes too much or too heavy to bear the episode. But yeah, I always like the ones that make me think extra hard about what the fuck's going on. At the end, you have a weird feeling of worry over Buffy that's not normal because she is in a vulnerable position. So you have a normal sense of worry where you're just like, oh shit, what's going to happen? whenever she goes into what she's going into each episode. But at this point, because of her added risk due to her vulnerability, you're just kind of like, fuck, she could really actually, like, something bad could happen to her now, because she doesn't have, like, her reflexes are not on point, her health is not up to par, she's like all over the fucking place. So, but I knew her resourcefulness would kick in.
For real, it's hard for me when it comes to Giles and what he does to her. I've seen this episode so many times, I know what happens after in the show. So it's hard for me to really sit with it and be like, oh my God, he did this fucked up thing, blah, blah, blah. He was instructed to do it, and this is obviously how it wants to be done. But he, more than enough times in the episode, says he doesn't want to do this. Like, he's like, this is a barbaric, archaic, like, outdated test that we could do a different way. Like, I'm telling you, why don't you just come out on patrol with us one night and watch her kill a vampire regularly?
You don't lose sight of his advocacy against it, you know what I mean? But it's, I think the way that they play the scenes out, and all you initially see is him injecting her, and then there's no narrative behind that for a few scenes before you really come to understand the full circle of, like, okay, this has to do with the council and all of this stuff. Like, as usual, you're playing connect the dots the whole time. So until you really get the full picture, upon initial impact of seeing it, you are kind of like, what's the fucking point of this? Like, what is he doing? It's kind of like a shock to your system. And that's why I was like, wait, where's this gonna go? Because I don't have time for this.
I know. I wish like I could review it the first time like you got to. So I'm glad you did. And we watched this as well online together as one of our little live watches, just to hang out and get through the episode. And it was cool watching some of your reactions and just talking about it a little bit along/after the way. Another thing I wanted to point out, because you triggered it, was Buffy's loss of power. Like you said, her reflexes weren't intact and some of the other stuff. And I was like kind of annoyed in some ways, because you know, and Buffy does use her mindset and stuff like that. But I'm like, you've learned so much as being the Slayer. Why can't you pivot that and reshape it to what you need? I like how she does still use her resources later when she actually gets in the house. But like across the episode, some of the other things, it's not just the strength. It's the mind and mentality. You don't lose the things that you thought and acted out and done all, you know, with your mindset set and seen through your own eyes, to like not be able to do certain things. Now I get it, the strength is a lot of it, like the skill in general, like it's like a power that lives within you that basically, you know, just like the master, just like in this episode when she spins around real quick and shoots the crossbow arrow in a normal Buffy Slayer setting, she would have not even had to like look at the vampire as she was turning. Once that thing went sailing, it was going to hit that heart, and you know what I mean? Just like the master, but he caught it right before it happened. Same thing in the Wish, like she shot him with a little mini crossbow and it still was going straight for his heart, and Xander's shoulder caught it right where his heart space would be. So it just shows like how targeted like the Slayer power is. And when she like misses later on Blair, I'm just like, now bitch, like you could have turned around for 2 seconds and like still like got it in that heart. But I'm like, maybe a little bit, I don't know. There's like a little bit of a wavering teeter-totter that comes to the scale of me being like.
But I do think it plays into like the power that your physical state has on your mental state. And when she's literally feeling sick and simultaneously she doesn't know why, because it would be different if like everyone around her got the flu and then she gets the flu, because then there's an explanation. But she's the only one losing anything as far as her health is concerned. So of course her mental state is probably so filled with like anxiety and whatever else, just knowing she's like sick or something could be wrong or she's turning normal, quote unquote. So yeah, I mean, I think that plays into how she can't like hone in on being so focused, like you're saying, because her headspace is also foggy, which I think is probably the point, because I was shocked too. I was like, bitch, now I know, we all know you have better aim than that. Like with or without your powers, aim is aim. And you've been trained every day
like
in the library.
The same with the dartboard. Yeah, her playing darts like with the knives and stuff like that, trying to hit it. Like, I don't know, like I said, it's a teeter-totter and thing, but you kind of just help grant it a little bit of a shift in perspective and saying like her mental fog and clarity is not there either. So she's like already kind of like, I don't know, it's like when you get flustered in a moment, you can't like execute something quite as well. So that's also it's this combination of totality
like,
of what her being has become in the episode.
General, you know, like what if you got food poisoning and you're the only one or something, and then you're feeling real weird all of a sudden, like you're taking it, then it becomes something way different. I think that when you feel sick in general, especially if you're the only one without any answer, like that just leaves a whole unsettling experience going on anyway.
Yeah. Well, before we start the episode walkthrough, I had a fun question that I'm surprised has not been presented to us, or that I have not presented to you, or ever really thought about. Well, I've thought about it myself a lot, so I already have my answer. But for you, like, Do you think if you came face to face with a vampire that you would be able to slay it? Knowing what you know now, like not necessarily just with the show, you know what does it, beheading, stakes, like all the things. With this knowledge, obviously you're a regular human in this scenario. I'm not saying you're a slayer that's lost her powers or anything like that. Just you as Courtney in 2025, if you really did face to face come with a vampire and it was like a vampire from the Buffy universe, do you think you'd be able to slay it?
See, you can't ask me a question like that because I have autism. So then I have so many questions after that. Because then I'm like, well, it depends on where we are and what's around and what I can use and all these things. I'll put it this way. I would hope that I would have enough resourcefulness to do it in the same way almost that Buffy did it in this episode, where it doesn't take a lot of physical like manpower, it takes more like mental clarity or resourcefulness. Yeah, or like wit almost, like you have to think fast, you have to think clearly, very impulsively, very suddenly, and you got to be like strategic as fuck at the same time. So I think yes, but obviously what the fuck do I know? What is your answer? Did you say absolutely? You said I have 17 steaks in my closet ready to go.
Well, I have 2 in front of me right now.
Oh, I have some holy water.
Oh, I would make some real quick. Like, I do like to think that I would be able to slay a vampire just because I have this whole arsenal of Buffy knowledge. I'm very agile. I can climb up stuff really quick. I can hop and kick and flip. Like I said back in the day, me and Tiffany used to play in the backyard. Like we were slayers.
You had your own training.
I mean, I've never really fully taken like taekwondo or like karate or anything like that to where I know some martial arts. But at the end of the day, I like to think if I'm going to be pent up against somebody and I'm going to have to fight, I'm going to like try my hardest to get out, even if that means playing dirty, picking up lamps and smashing them in the head with it, fucking beating them to death with fucking staircase pegs, like whatever you want to call them, like doing all those things. I think it would, like you said, kind of come down to like what's around me at the time. But obviously, just like Buffy does, I think we both are really resourceful when we need it. And if I knew I needed a steak, like even if that means grabbing a twig off of a tree, like I'm going to try to use that. I hope I would be equipped and prepared for that in the moment if it arose. At the same time, there's also the play on the vampire has its own strength and like supernatural ability that I do not possess because I am not a slayer. But that's an important question kind of too, because, we have regular Joes. Willow has dusted vampires. Giles has killed vampires. And it's because they have a certain type of training and atmosphere that they're submersed in. Now, obviously, there's been plenty of episodes where Willow or Xander or somebody's up against a vampire and they feel more powerless. Obviously, if I'm coming up against Spike or Angelus or Drusilla, I might not make it out quite as unscathed as I would if I just like met some regular vampire on the street that hangs out behind alleys and just got made 3 weeks ago, he was freshly sired or something like that and didn't have all his 400 years of like mindset like Darla had of doing this repetitively and knowing like how to stalk and do all this other stuff, so I think if I was put up against a vampire, yes, absolutely, I would be able to do it, because I'd hope it would just turn its back, or I'd be able to hit it over the back of the head, and then that second that it was down, I'd have a stake, and I'd probably be like Buffy and be like, "Ooh, missed the heart," and have to like, "Oop." I'm trying to overhear and act it, but I'd be like, miss the heart. But also, we're anatomy people and we know the body, so I know exactly where the heart lies. But it's also about driving that through someone's sternum, and an enhanced sternum at that, because vampires. I'm like, it's a whole, like you said, it's kind of like
we would have to rely solely on our resourcefulness, I think, and getting the advantage of hopefully getting one step ahead, and that being enough.
All right, well, let's see what Buffy has resourceful in this episode. As we walk through it, scene by scene. We open at Angel's mansion while he and Buffy have one of their training sessions, quote unquote. And of course, all fighting scenarios require a shit ton of candles, a roaring fire, and floor-length edible arrangements laid out before us because, they got the grapes and the cheeses and all this other stuff. They over on Prophecy Girls, they call it Angel Charcuterie because there's multiple episodes where like they say it's his side business. He knows how to make a charcuterie board more than anybody else, and I see why. But their training sequence culminates in Buffy staking Angel with the loaf of bread. I thought it was funny because when we were watching it, you're like, is that a loaf of bread? And I'm like, it is. It gives new meaning on Revamp to who needs breadcrumbs when you can have the whole loaf. But before Buffy takes his loaf, she hops from on top of Angel because neither of them can actually get satisfied because the two aren't allowed satisfaction in the personal sense. You know what happened to that? That happens. She needs to head out and meet up with Giles anyways, but Angel speaks briefly with her on the potential birthday plans that weekend. Unfortunately for Angel, she already has a thing. a date.
Nice attempt at casual. Actually, I do have a date. Older man. Very handsome. Likes it when I call him daddy.
Your father. It is your father, right?
He's taking me to the ice show.
So funny because obviously, she tells him of her ice show plans with her actual father and how she needs to have some fun, and she's really excited about it. And this is where we kick off the whole Buffy's really excited about her dad coming to town to hang out with her and take her to the ice show and do all this other stuff that they do. Or she's going to Los Angeles, however, whatever way it works. I can't imagine. I mean, they got the ice palace obviously at Sunnydale, but I can't imagine that's the one her dad used to take her to. Also, he didn't seem to take her last year, so this is kind of like a continuity error in the show because we didn't hear that. But also, it once again reaffirms that we found out during What's My Line, whenever Buffy was ice skating and she killed the demon that was like the Order of Taraka, and her and Angel kissed on ice and all that stuff. We know that Sarah Michelle Gellar and just Buffy as a character both really like ice skating, so she's really excited to go see the ice show. So I really do like the callback to that. We then flash over to the library where we find her and Giles doing lessons on crystals, and we're educated on amethyst incorrectly because it does not have money properties at all that it does. Just saying. You want to use other stones for that or other elements, like usually things that are green, not purple. But I think it could be useful in cleansing the aura.
It could be, yeah.
Okay, so how do you know if one's aura is dirty? Somebody come by with a finger and write "wash me" on it?
So funny. This is what you think of. This is probably me back in the day, like when I first started getting into crystals. But at the same time, nowadays, I'm like, I have so much respect for these types of energies. I can't be over here making jokes about it, but I will. Jokes aside. Giles would like Buffy to focus, though, instead of make jokes, since he must rely on her to keep up training versus Faith, who isn't interested in proper training. And this is where Buffy too, she's like, I hate being the good one. And I'm like, the one who actually shows up to do her stuff. Like, Faith is just out here chilling in her motel. Like, they could get Faith over here doing this shit too, but also Faith's not almost 18. She wants, though, to get out and patrol, and Giles is assuring that she will be out there soon enough. And he's asking her, he's like, why are you so anxious? And she's like, well, I just have some energy to burn. And I did notice that she's like playing with a phallic crystal at this point too. She's done got pent up stress, like not released with Angel. Like that tension was like really getting it, for obviously the loaf of bread, all the other stuff, like the sexual innuendos that are all painted throughout our cold open. And now she's sitting over here playing with this thing, and I was like, she wants to burn that energy out on killing a vampire or something like that because she didn't get the payoff from Angel. But she has to, of course, lie to Giles. And then he pulls out a large stone, setting it before her and asking her to concentrate on it. It's not the last time we'll be seeing this stone. It's a really pretty stone, I will say. I want all the crystals that are on the table. When she finally makes it to patrol at the park, Buffy battles a vampire, owning his ass until she doesn't. Going to stake him, but having a momentary dizzy spell, him tossing her down to the ground, forcing her hand, twisting the stake in her hand to hover over her heart with goals of embedding it into her chest. Buffy, appearing weak to him, looks on in distress as he sarcasms she should let him know if he's not doing this right. Fucked up. We fade to black and cue the Buffy theme. Perfection. I like the little fight sequence that we get right here because the toss and tumble down the slide. She's like, that was really funny looking. Could you do that again? And he's like, the fuck, bitch. Like, but how did she get up there? Did she toss him up there and then climb up the steps real quick and then kick him down? Like, she's just playing with the vampire, and it kind of shows that playful energy as a slayer. She's like, I've got this. The way she's speaking to him too, this Buffy banter is enhanced for the episode because we know that she's about to lose her power. So this is just really cementing it for us to be like, Buffy goes out here and plays with these vampires, just like her beating the one up with the trash can lid and lie to me. Like, she knows she's got this when she goes out, especially if it's a simple vampire. It's not like Angelus or some big bad. It's just one of those everyday run-of-the-mill linear vampires I spoke on. So she's owning his ass. She's out here just living in the moment, enjoying her duty and owning it. And it makes the intensity of the scene so much better when that energy is redirected on her with her power laps. With her own.
And it's like, it's weird when you see her in these kind of instances, especially in this one, because you honestly don't know what's going on straight out the gate. And it's not clear to you as a viewer that it's a dizzy spell. She just kind of stops what she's doing mid momentum. It's kind of like she just loses it all of a sudden and has like a momentary brain lapse and escapes her body. I don't know. It's just like she disappears from the world for a minute. And I had no idea. I didn't know she was sick. First, I was like, did she see something? Because it's kind of like in motion. I didn't think at that moment even that she was sick. I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
I think it's funny because they play that little sound cue effect that's like very stripping sounding, like like, wow. That's awful. I don't know why I even trying to make sound effects, but it sounds like almost like if you had like energy in a ball or something that got sucked away from it or something. It shows like something leaving is the gust of air energy that it gives, like depleted. If I had to put a sound effect for the word depleted, that's the sound effect that plays whenever that happens. So you're like, what the fuck? Because obviously they pair that with it, and it just adds to you being like, what the fuck is going on? Well, after the fake commercial break, then that same motion, Buffy headbutts the vampire, pushing him off of her, grabbing her stake and holding it up as he leaps back onto her. Unfortunately, uncoordinated, he lands on it and stakes himself, and we get the 2 caper slay on this vampire. Buffy dusting herself off, also confused, leaving the park. That was so funny. One, how she wiped some dust off her shirt because he like collapsed on her and dusted. But also I thought it was funny too. Well, not really funny. Interesting how Buffy headbutts him. And this is like where she first starts to lose her Slayer powers. This is the first night of this happening. So I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, why didn't she have this big ass lump on her fucking forehead the next morning if her Slayer abilities are gone? But I was like, maybe they're still in there. But I'm like, that headbutt had to hurt just a little bit more if you felt this like woozy, out of it mind,
and you're starting
space,
to
like
feel
that you were
things
already
like a
entering into.
normal like person.
Yeah. I was like, ooh, a headbutt though? And I was like, well, I mean, a headbutt's the best you got in an instance like that, because you hit that motherfucker in his head with yours. That's like skull against skull. So that's better than your fist or you cracking fingers over his face. Ugh. The next day, we see her in the library tossing knives at a target board, having no precision or aim for the grid, telling Giles something is wrong. She tells him of what happened the night before and how she's off her game, again stressing what's going on, him suggesting, well, maybe you're sick. This would obviously be awful for her because she's going to have to cancel her plans with her father. She's like, no, my dad's taking me to the ice show. And then she just leaves the library because if she stays, she's going to continue to break things, apparently. That was funny because she's like throwing the thing and she's like, no, I just need to spend more time training. And then she breaks the glass and Giles just looks up like frustrated, like, bitch, you're tearing up my library. And she's like, I'm gone. Then at lunch, she's talking about the ice show once again with the gang, and we learned Willow threw up on Woodstock at the Snoopy on Ice that she went to when she was little. Snay on the caramel corn if you go backstage. Buffy is expressing excitement once again. Clearly, she won't stop talking about this, and she confesses it's a big dumb girly thing that she loves, and Oz agrees with her because it's really, really cool.
It's not so girly. Ice is cool. It's water, but it's not.
I don't get it. It's such some people say that like the dialogue should be cut from the show, and I'm just like, it sounds like something Oz would say.
It does, yeah.
Xander wonders if they're going to party with her to celebrate the birth of the Buff. Her reminding them at her parties, monsters crash, people die, so probably not. She's like, we're not going to have a party this year. And Willow reminds her of her rites of passage on turning 18, and Buffy exclaims that she just wants a chill time this year. A chill time with her daddy. Her father, not the Heshti. Not chill time with the Heshti. At home, Joyce cooks dinner as Buffy arrives to find a present from her father. Ooh, present. It's like an in-scene transition magic. Joyce is calling out. She's like, Buffy? And she's like, present. Like you would call out in class. And then she sees the present on the counter. She's like, ooh, present. It's fun how they do the writing. The present itself includes 2 ice show tickets tacked to some balloons and flowers. And her dad is going to bail on her for work instead of spending time with her. Joyce tells her all this. Buffy immediately getting bummed as Joyce offers to take her to the ice show if she would like. And I like that because, you know, Joyce is like, I'll take off work to like take you. I don't have to go to the gallery that night. She already knows that Buffy's going to be upset with this because she's just like, we've heard all episodes, probably heard Buffy talking about this for 2 fucking weeks. And she's like, you know what I mean? So there's that. Buffy tells her as she crumples up the fucking card in her hand, she's like, I was just thinking how it might be nice to have a quiet birthday this year. And I'm like, okay, bitch, we can see you. We see your frowny face, all this other stuff, because her back's turned to her mother. And this is really shitty of her dad. Obviously, the last time we saw her dad was in Nightmares. And I know in that episode, her nightmare was of her dad, like telling her that she didn't mean anything to him and all of that. But Hank kind of almost pulls in this energy. Like the last time we really seen him was at the beginning of when she was bad, when he was helping Joyce unload her shoes that she got while she was hanging out with him on summer break, and he called her distant and all this other stuff. And now he's not coming through for his daughter. And I'm going to go ahead and like low-key kind of spoil it because we don't really like see Hank in the full spectrum like that again, but this just kind of kicks off the start of him being a really shitty father. Like he just doesn't show up for them anymore, and her specifically. So it starts this whole route of like, okay, your dad's just not going to be present in your life anymore. And I say that because obviously we kind of see Giles step into the father figure role a little bit more so in this episode than any other, when we've already been calling him a father figure to Buffy as we've kind of been learning. But also again, her birthday is starting to take a turned to the shit category from this jump on for the episode anyways. We then cut over to a bando that Courtney would definitely want to explore, Sunnydale Arms, which is now turned into the Airbnb from hell, which I wrote all that in my notes. And then when we were watching it, you were like, ooh, a bando bed and breakfast. Don't mind if I do. And then I was like, I don't think you want to go to this B&B. Inside, we find Englishmen prepping the area named Hobson and Blair, who was breaking up the windows, and another man clearly in charge directing the two men to sleep in shifts that night. The camera slowly panning in on a wooden locked box as the man voices, and I'm going to say the man now that I'm speaking of is Quentin Travers. So I don't have to call him the man in a couple other scenes before we actually learn who he is. But he lets them know that they are getting close and how the Slayer's preparation is nearly complete. The POV shot of something looking from inside the box at the men, showing that within the man saying his statement. Very eerie. We were like, what the fuck's in this fucking box, first off? But then also, like, what are these men doing? Because, you know, upon first watch, you're like, Slayer's preparation. What the fuck are they talking about? Are these people trying to kill the Slayer this episode? Or the, you know, because they just look like regular humans at this point as well. They're over here boarding up a house and stuff. You're like, what the fuck is going on?
No, I mean, it seemed very targeted against Buffy in a not controlled way, as what's his name was putting it, like a controlled test or whatever. At that moment, it didn't seem like it had anything to do with the Watchers Council or anything to do with Buffy's training or any of that. Like, you just literally think this is the setup for her to be like kidnapped and thrown into a bando and then like eaten by a vampire.
Yeah, the people that are out to get her this
exactly
episode. Yeah, I always feel the same thing. Well, at the library, it's another round of gemstone training for Buffy as Giles unpacks crystals onto the table, her going on telling him about the wonders of Ice Show and how excellent they are, and him focused on setting the grounding crystal before her again to start with. Her continuing on and on about how families go together, him telling her to look at the flaw at its core. Buffy then finishing how if someone were free, they'd take their daughters or their students.
Or their Slayer.
She's all trying to like breadcrumb his ass and make him be like, okay. And the sad thing is he's trying to ignore her. Like, this is actually, like, in Giles' perspective, if he wasn't trying to get her to focus on this crystal so he could drug her ass up, he probably on his mindset is being like, oh shit, I'm doing this fucked up thing to her, and she's trying to ask me to take her to this Ice Show. You know what I mean? But it breezes right past it because what we need to get from the scene. But like sitting with that from him, what Giles might have thought about afterwards, he'd be like, well, you know, this test.
And then I wonder if like he wanted to like mentally remove himself from what her like notion was as far as like insinuating that he should go with her in her dad's place kind of thing because of what he was about to do. So he's probably like, I don't want to talk about this. You know, like he did not want to acknowledge that because of what he was about to do.
Yeah. Well, he brushes her off, asking her again to concentrate on the flaw. She does, and she dazes out. And like she appears to be in some sort of a trance. And I was like, what kind of crystal does this? Because that's a big hunk of crystal. It's got that little chip of like, I don't know, almost like malformation in the crystal itself, or like some kind of crystal within a crystal. I was like, I need this so I can like put people in, what do they call it? Like a hypnotic hallucinant. What's
like a hypnotic
like hypnotherapy type state. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in that trance. She has no awareness. And he takes out a box when he realizes that she's out of there mentally, revealing a needle and fluid, and then he injects that into Buffy's arm. He does the classic like tap 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 and squirt and all the things. He's like, I got this from Marcy. Not the first time we've seen Buffy get stuck with a needle on this show, I will say. I didn't even think about that.
Me either.
Once he's finished waving a hand in front of the crystal to break that link between it and Buffy, her conscience returns, and she apologizes for zoning out and linking it to not feeling well, the two agreeing on calling it a night as she leaves so that way she can get better. Giles wishing her a good night with a smirk. And this kind of like looks creepy, but like I don't know, that they're trying to make the viewer think like something else is going on here. Like what's happening to Giles? Is he like under some kind of spell, or like what's going on? It's kind of almost like what they did with Willow and her other two witchy friends last episode, to kind of like make you think that something more was happening than is happening.
So unsettling because Giles is like the one person you don't see in this like ethically conflicting space in the show, whether it's toward Buffy or anyone really. He's never really like blurring the lines on what his motive is. He's always the one that you don't question. You always know where Giles stands, and he's always in favor of the good of things. So when you see him do something that's, number one, you don't have context for in the beginning, but then you see him physically injecting her with something. Of course, in that instance, I at least started putting together, okay, well, at least this explains like why she's feeling weird, or like why her powers are getting depleted or whatever. But you still don't know why in this moment.
Mhm.
And the fact that it's the one person you trust the most out of the whole entire cast outside of Buffy is so odd. You know, it's like you're taking the two most trustworthy cast members and you're having one of them do something completely seemingly untrustworthy to the other trustworthy one. So like Giles eliminates himself as a trustworthy person in this moment, because even as it plays out, and we'll get there when we get there, the undertone of that happening doesn't go unnoticed, or like it doesn't go unchecked. You know, like Giles definitely pays a heavy consequence for doing it, even with good motive. So I don't know, it was fucked up.
Yeah. This is so like, I mean, we'll talk about it more later, but this is such a intrusive process of doing this. With all the knowledge and magics that we have on the show, they could have just put some kind of spell on Buffy to make her like strip her of her ability temporarily or do something like that. Like this is to get injected with something is just intense in itself.
I
So
think
it's,
the
crazy to
thing
think about.
I struggle with the most about it is that, to me, there's an easy solution where you change nothing except for you give the Slayer the power of awareness, and you say, hey, as part of when you turn 18, you have to undergo this test. As part of the test, you are not allowed to have your powers. So we have to administer this drug. You're going to feel weird.
Yeah.
At least you have a little awareness around it, instead of the most trustworthy fatherly figure in your life when you're already having a mental emotional debate with your actual fatherly figure. And now the one you do look to trust and feel safe at is literally injecting you with something. Even if Giles passed the test, Buffy passed the test, everyone passes the test, how are these two people going to coexist with each other when Buffy knows that he, like you said, he completely invaded her personal privacy, her personal physical space? So I don't know. That would be like you drugging me and be like, no big deal.
No, you would probably be like, thanks, mate. That was a great hack.
I'm like, got any more?
I know, right? Not if I was drugging you with this shit. I don't know. Sometimes I'd be needing a muscle relaxant so that my back don't hurt, you know?
You're like, in fact, drug me.
Look, yeah, can he do that to me and have it target my extensors?
You're like, well, it give me a
Maybe
fever
my
so I can call out
flex-
of work.
Do I need my glenohumeral joint fixed? Then that'll do it. No, obviously the awareness can't be made because then the Slayer might fight against that. And that gives us the role of the council and the negative aspects that we'll talk about in Themes of Metaphor, where they're about control. They have to do the situation a certain way. They probably have the lean back of,
why would they need to make
like
then like if she's in a trance that hard, they could have had someone they could have had Quentin or whoever himself come in from the Watchers Council and inject, you know what I mean? Why do you need it
it's
to
still
be
the
Giles?
same thing though, whether it's
why
Giles
do you
or not,
have to
because
have it be her Watcher when, like I said, when they pass the test, even going forward for all of life, she is going to feel so personally invaded by the one person you've assigned for her to trust.
For sure. But listen, and I mean, yes, trust, and they didn't expect Buffy and him to get a father-daughter relationship. Not all Slayers and Watchers have this, because most Watchers operate under a certain type of code. They have a certain type of energy. Giles came in with that energy. Giles was very much on the nose in the beginning of the series, but he's developed and learned with Buffy and knows that this is not how Buffy operates and what he has to do to, like empathy, coincide and live life with her.
So it's like the empathy within itself. It's as much as we love it for Giles's character, it's gonna be like the death of him, basically. So yeah,
and that's the unfortunate thing, is like that's the just as much as the Slayers duty comes with burden, the Watchers does too, especially in this moment. And it's very unfortunate in that way, because like you said, it can break trust. Like other Slayers, who knows how many of them have passed the cruciamentum. Like maybe not many, because they're rid of their powers, and obviously we know other Slayers will come after them. So how many
about it because they don't know,
possibly died from this?
Yeah,
exactly. But I think that's also the element that we need of them not having the awareness, because then it just comes on and being like, well, I'm not up to strength, and then they lock them up in this place, or however, whatever they've done in the past. It's not probably not always
No,
a
I
bando, so that way they have
understand.
the element of
I guess then I'll
surprise.
take back
Like,
and say the idea should be then to have anyone but their own watcher administer the thing if they're already going to be
yeah,
that deeply into a trance where they don't know. So that way later they don't
yeah.
find out, oh, hey, while you were like entranced, your watcher freaking
To
drugged you.
physically, yes. Yeah, because then you're not dealing with like, you invaded my space, you injected me with this stuff, someone else did. But there's always still going to be that trust issue there. Like, there's going to be that problem that you knew this was happening,
Yeah, but
like, and
that's
you
a lot
didn't stop
easier
it
to
or let me know
explain
or
when you're
anything.
hands off, you know, and
Exactly.
you're like, listen, I took on this role just like
No,
you took on your role, and that's that, you know.
he was the literal hand, which
Yeah,
kind of
that
sucks,
sucks.
but we'll get to some more later. At school the next day, Buffy and Willow walk and talk about Amy the rat and how she apparently loves the wheel that they discussed at the end of last episode. She's still a rat, and Willow's enjoying her being the pet. And you were saying that last episode too. You were like, and Willow's obviously enjoying having the pet rat. And also lets us know that she hasn't turned Amy back yet. I love how they make the little callback to that to let us know that Amy's still there as a rat. And we hear a man arguing with Courtney nearby about her blowing him off at the bronze and getting physical with her. Buffy moving to help her as usual, but not being able to pull the guy off of her, noticing that she has no strength, him knocking her back effortlessly onto the ground, and Cordelia smacking him around for what he did, and him being like, chick started it. And I think it's really interesting. She's hitting him like, kind of like I hate to use the phrase in a girly way, but it's basically like how a normal girl would fight back to a guy.
Yeah,
She's
she's
just
like
patting him and
rapidly
beating him
like
on the chest multiple
punching.
times. And he's like backing off from it because he's like, whoa, he's like, stop. Even though he was just getting really mildly aggressive, like a little too
Like, what
aggressive.
do
I
you
don't know why he yoinked
expect?
her ass up
Yeah.
like that. But first of all, no. Willow rushes to Buffy to help her up, asking if she's okay, but she's not. Which we see her find Giles moments later to frantically tell him in the hallways that something's wrong and how she just got bested by some dude and rescued by Cordelia. I love the way that they did that dialogue. Also wondering again what the fuck is going on. Him telling her that he's sure it will sort itself out. And here's where I started to notice Giles is steering clear of what he isn't saying and trying to be strategic in his wording so he's not lying to Buffy. Because based on how we see how he feels later and the decisions made, we see he doesn't feel good about what he's doing. At least that's my take. It was interesting just really watching this analytically and staring at Giles and watching his facial reactions and things like that when I'm able to take in more than just like the concept of the episode. That's the only sucky thing about as a first time viewer for you is sometimes you're like lost in like all of these things being fed to your brain at one time. You can't pick up on all the other nuances in the episode. So little hidden aspects, all that. But she concludes that she has no strength or coordination. She throws knives like,
A girl?
Like I'm not the Slayer.
he assures her, giving his word that in time they'll get to the bottom of this anomaly, which is truthful. He's definitely given her his word, and they're definitely going to get to the bottom of this at some point. But it's like one of them things when you know the truth about something, you're trying to beat around the bush and like fight the urge to tell somebody specifically to their face the issue. Like you say all these things that you're like, well, it was a white lie, or like I didn't lie to you, like I told you I was doing such and such, but you just didn't believe me because of the way I put it out there, you know, things like that. At the bando, we see Giles now sitting with the head Englishman, Quentin, as we said earlier. Quentin Travers. I wrote it in my notes. This is where I was supposed to unveil his name, but I said it earlier. He's sitting with Quentin, having tea, and expressing doubts about what's occurring. Quentin laying out this whole thing that Giles phrases as an archaic exercise in cruelty, and he tells us a little bit more about it.
Procedmentum is not easy for Slayer or Watcher, but it's been done this way for a dozen centuries. Whenever a Slayer turns 18, it's a time-honored rite of passage.
Giles goes on worried about locking Buffy weak and defenseless in this bando and unleash that thing on her. Looking over at the box from earlier that's in the other room, Giles wants them to take his word that his Slayer is on point. Travers saying that he can't judge. They need to test her cunning, imagination, along with other skills that the Slayer must possess for self-reliance. Him assuring Giles when it's over, his Buffy will be stronger for it, or she'll be dead for it, Giles adds. Like, that's like, he's like on that 50-50 line. He's like, well, I do say that my Slayer is really hardcore and awesome and has bested every foe that she's come up against, but she also has her Slayer abilities when that happens. So, like, whatever. Travers says as Giles leaves that if what he says is true of her, then she will be fine. And I do like how Quentin's trying to assure him. He's like, listen, if you say all the things about your Slayer is true, then she's going to be okay. Like, it'll be good. She'll figure out how to get out of this. Like maybe the three other Slayers over 400 years that's done this. One longer than that, because he said 12 centuries this has been done. Just saying as well. That's a long time. That's like 1200 years they've been doing this. So that lets us know the Slayer line goes way back.
Well, I think my issue with this too, when you start piecing together what's happening and that Giles' responsibility is to inject Buffy, and this is the reason, and all these things. My concern, and I do understand why, like you're saying, the important part to remember is that not every Watcher-Slayer relationship is like Giles and Buffy's, because I do think that obviously in order to be a Watcher, you have to be somewhat emotionally removed or have that ability. Because I can't imagine how you don't take someone on who's basically essentially a version of like your child, because you have to be responsible for them and take care of them and protect them and all these things. So I don't know. I couldn't separate myself that far. So I understand his natural organic worry, but it does bother me in a way that he's so worried, because it almost kind of seems like he doesn't even know himself how resourceful Buffy is, and I understand she is limited without her Slayer powers, but like we keep saying, and like we've always said throughout the series, she's resourceful first more than anything, and she's proven that like so many times, whenever she's gotten a stake taken from her, whenever she's weak, whenever she's distracted, whenever she's fighting 5 vampires or 11 vampires, like she has to be resourceful all the time. The only thing that plagued me a little is that Giles seemingly didn't have enough faith in her in order for her to arrive and still be able to do it, knowing this has been done for so many centuries. And obviously there's a reason for that. So I'm like, shouldn't you believe in her a little bit more and like, I don't know, not risk your own livelihood over it?
It's that other shoe dropping possibility, like him being like, well, on one side I believe that she'll be fine, but then on the other side, like there's that chance, there's that glimmer of non-hope that Buffy will not come out the victor in this process.
I just think after he's going to be left with things like beating the master and all these other things that were ultimately supposed to be her demise, and she's still yet to be demised. I just feel like it should speak for itself. So I feel a little bit mad at Giles for letting his worry be the thing that overshadows his belief in her ability, I guess, is my problem.
Sure. I do like that this scene comes after we see the injection scene, though, so we get clarity on the fact that Giles is not feeling good about what he's doing and stuff, and like telling him like this is archaic, this is not cool, this is cruelty that like towards him. And then also on the flip side, like what we're talking about right now, and to conclude kind of here, Giles is not only just feeling bad, like, and having that worry about his Slayer dying, he's also probably thinking about the repercussions of like what happens to him mentally after his Slayer dies, because then another one's not called, it's then up to Faith to be the Slayer. Now he's got a new Slayer, and Buffy's not an existent part of the world anymore.
And he probably feels slightly responsible for that.
And then also it's kind of fucked up too, because technically, based on what we found about what Kralik wants to do once he gets out later, he wants to turn Buffy into a vampire. So like imagine that's when we get the whole thing, like that's now a vampire Slayer that has Slayer abilities and vampire abilities. So like imagine that coming back to
like y'all thought Drusilla was bad.
Anyways, they continue to work on the house, and we hear some screams coming from the box, moving inside to open it, showing us what it contains, which is a vampire in a straitjacket strapped inside. Blair grabs an extendable spoon, putting some pills in it, and addressing the vampire as Kralik to take them, spooning them into his mouth. Hobson following up with a glass of water, both keeping distance. They close the box back up as sinister music echoes out of elsewhere. At the library, the gang are researching what could be going on with Buffy. Xander thinking it could be a Slayer kryptonite, Oz and him dueling over Superman knowledge briefly, and Oz coming out the victor because Oz is correct, and that's just canon. Buffy reminding them this is reality. I'm like, yes, because, a superhero who flies around and saves people is crazy talk when it comes to a girl who slays undead vampires. The show is so hilarious with this. Buffy, bothered, is half-assed consoled by Willow, who has doubts Buffy may not get her powers back, saying she would just deal if she didn't get her powers back. Giles coming in, her breaking off the convo to ask if he's found out anything, and him clarifying a firm no. Another huge moment for me that really cements Buffy doesn't actually want her old life back. Willow starts in this sentence before Buffy breaks from her to float the idea that maybe this could open up new opportunities for Buffy. She's like, well, this could open up so much, and it gets straight cut, because any thought of like a version of normal for Buffy was on the table for a second. And if Giles hadn't walked in right there, Buffy might have actually entertained that conversation a little bit longer. But it wants you to notice, when you really watch the show more times than one, what makes the moment striking is that she immediately pulls away from Willow's suggestion and runs straight to Giles, desperate to know if he's found out anything. When am I getting my powers back? How am I getting my powers back? Do you have answers? That choice says it all, that she doesn't want normal anymore. She wants her power back. And to me, that's a really significant beat for the episode. And I didn't notice that before. I didn't at all. Like, I've seen this episode so many times. I never noticed, like, how this is. So I once again, it just brings back how much I love being a little bit more of an analyzer, watching the show for the podcast, because it puts these other small little elements that just enhance my like love for the show, and the little details that the actors, the actresses put into their performance, and also what's kind of in between the lines that you don't get just from dialogue, you get from body language.
That's so true.
You know, it's immaculate. Again, back at the bando, our two workers switch sleep shift as Kralik starts to freak out again. And this motherfucker, he's just in there like, pills, like going fucking ham. And he's like begging for them motherfuckers. Blair leaves his door open to retrieve water from the neighboring room, because he's like, I got to go in the kitchen and get some water for this vampire. He can't just take these dry pills. You know, like Katie Heron says from Mean Girls. It's like that lump you get in your throat when you dry swallow a big pill. I don't know why I just put that in here, but I just thought about it. Obviously, Blair comes back out and he loads up the spoon, but Kralik claims in the midnight delirium he can't reach them to bring them closer. Blair stepping too close and getting got at the throat by Kralik as he breaks the act, telling him it's okay now. Really cool moment too, because like as he's in the kitchen, you see him like freaking out, and he just assumes he's wailing and screaming, but he's actually stretching and ripping the fucking one arm sleeve off of the thing so he can free his arm out of the straitjacket. Terrifying. And we're like, oh shit, like what's going to happen to this motherfucker? We'll find out in a little bit, because right now we go over to Angel's, and Buffy sits with Angel opening her birthday gift from him, which is a poetry book of sonnets from the Portuguese author Elizabeth Barrett, which he's written always inside her little book. He didn't even write from Angel. He just wrote always, like I'm always yours. I'm like, oh, sweet baby. He wonders if she likes it, and she calls it beautiful and thoughtful and full of neat words to say, like wilt and henceforth. Because this is a book that came from like, I want to say, I think I have it in the fun facts, but I think it's like an 1800s book or something like that. And this is an original copy that he has as well. So he's giving her his copy that he's probably had for 200 years.
Literally.
And then Angel retorts to her,
Then why'd you seem more excited last year when you got a severed arm in a box?
love the little callbacks. I was like, well, last year she did get the fucking arm in the box. The judge. Her chalking up apologies and claims that she's freaking out about this whole not being the Slayer thing, expressing she can't go back to just being normal. She's seen too much and knows what goes bump in the night. I really like that she says, like, I know too much. I know what goes bump in the night. I can't fucking do this. But it also was a little note to say that she then calls out Mr. Pointy and joking about like Slayer nursing homes and how she's going to show Mr. Pointy to them as like a trophy piece and all this other stuff. It's just so funny, like the way her mindset's like she's feeling like fear and hopeful that her powers may or may not come back, but she's also still kind of being jokey in the moment too, because she kind of has like the mindset of being like, well, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. He tells her claims of being helpless or boring aren't facts, her giving him a lesson then on the shallow energy before becoming the Slayer that was borderline worse than Cordelia, even though she says Spordelia. She's like, I can't say the name. I'm like, girl, just say Cordelia, you know, we know. And how he wouldn't have liked her. He tells her of how he saw her before she was the Slayer when she was called, telling us of that scene that we saw in Becoming Part 1 of him watching her come out the school, walk down the steps, and then that guy come over and be like, you're the chosen one, you're the Slayer. And she'd be like, huh? He's like, I wanted to eat that lollipop that was in your hand. We remember that scene, and I like that he specifically calls back to it and tells her, but he also tells her in the statement, like, that's when I knew I loved you, because I could see your heart.
You held it before you for everyone to see. And I worried that it would be bruised or torn. And more than anything in my life, I wanted to keep it safe. To warm it with my own.
I want to say that like the sway that he does when he walks, his stride is very well thought out. Like David Boreanaz nails Angel. Like he's clearly made the character his own, especially in these compassionate moments. Like the way he's walking towards Buffy and just like I said, body language, reading the scenes and all of that. I notice he's taking the slow approach and kind of like walking with his words that he's saying, making every beat of his footstep like hit a different beat of what he's trying to come across and tell her about this beautiful like moment, story, whatever. Which in this moment she thinks his words are sweet, but if literal, they both agree that it's incredibly gross to talk about. He's like, I could hold it out like in my hands and touch your heart, blah blah blah, and she's like, ew. But they just hug. They're like, I love you, and he's like, I love you too, but they don't say that, but we feel it. Back over at the bando, Kralik. I love how I'm saying bando so much this
I like
episode
it.
too. Like you really do. I know. I was about to say Buffy really is the perfect show to have been watching with you. Well, Kralik is still strapped into the box. He's licking the blood off his fingers, and that's the first shot we see. And you busted out laughing. You were like, "This motherfucker."
Oh, great.
We see dead Blair on the ground, morphing into a newly risen vampire and grabbing a nearby axe to break Kralik out of the box. It's interesting too. I noticed the marks on the neck from the bite disappear when he shifted into his vampire phase. And I was like, okay, vampires don't heal that fast. I was like, why did they choose to make that a thing? You know? I didn't really understand it. I would still like the bite marks to be there after they become a vampire. So they like, even if it takes a day for them to heal.
I said, I would like for them to be there.
Well, I would, because I don't get it. Like, get the face morphing, but why did the vampire bite wounds disappear? That's still a superficial wound that's on the face. Vampires don't heal that fast. If you were to cut a vampire's hand, their hand doesn't heal right back up immediately. You know what I mean? They would still have a gash for a couple of days, just as we've seen Angel get beat up and him have marks all over him. Like, did you not see all the marks in the wish that Willow was causing on him? Those were still healing, even though he was getting tortured every day. So I'm like,
you're like,
that's why I
inconsistencies
say,
in
like,
the report.
I need the continuity. I need
too.
them to do it the right way. That's why I was like, I need them to do this for me. But also I wanted to point out how Kralik killed this motherfucker and sired him with one arm, because he was still strapped into the box and his head was still chained
in one place too. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. He thanks Vampire Blair for breaking him free, and he goes over and takes some of his pills because he's like, these are still necessary, voicing that he still wants to play this little game the Watchers Council has going on, but just not by the council's rules, telling him to go get his friends so they can discuss his new plan over dinner. I like that moment too, because you were like, ooh, shit, like, this motherfucker hate to see them bitches coming. That's crazy, because he probably morphed into his regular face and was like, hey, can you come in here and help me with Kralik real quick? And then went back in there, and then when he turns around, he sees that Kralik's not in the fucking box, and he's like, wait a minute, and turns around, both of these vampires stand in front of him, and then whatever happens in the kitchen happens in the kitchen. Like,
they had dinner.
Yeah, they sure did. Well, that's why I had to be in the kitchen, because they were having dinner. That's terrifying. Kralik is fucking scary.
He is, and he looks like he could be like literally, I don't know, 7'7". Legit, he looks like he could be so tall.
He's pretty tall. Yeah. You like how he's in like the lighter version of Michael Myers' outfit?
I know, but like, then it looks like it does. It puts
onesie.
Like a good aesthetic for the level of like insanity that you're dealing with, because he literally looks like he just came fresh out of an insane asylum, like with the straight jacket vibes and everything.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I'm like, how did they get this vampire? He's fucking terrifying. And I want to say too, I didn't note it, but I really like just like the actor who played Luke back in the day. He has a very specific type of voice, like just the cadence and the vocal, like whatever naturally comes out of his mouth. Like we all have our natural voice. He has a very distinct like speech. Like I don't know how to like put this. That just doesn't make sense. His voice box creates this very interesting.
He has like a very textured voice or something. Yeah.
Yes. It's so cool. And then obviously the vampire makeup helps to enhance that too, with the teeth in his mouth and all of that.
He was
like,
genuinely, I think, probably willing to bet he was one of the ones that needed like less, what do you call it? Like less
work done.
Yeah, exactly. Like because when I just looked at his real picture and he just looks like very similar to that. Yeah, like literally.
Yeah. I think it's funny too, because we see him the whole episode in vamp face. We don't see him outside of it. You know what I mean? He doesn't morph back and forth or anything like that. He just like is the personification of a vampire. Like at this point in his life, he's like, I'm not going to change back to my human form because I don't need to see that. Even though he can't see it because he can't look in the mirror. But
that's true.
Either way, back into the episode. Later, we found Giles entering the bando, calling out for Quentin, who is not present. And this is where you were like, oh, shit, like, fuck. Giles is going in here. Like, you were like,
I'm like, Giles, go back home.
Yep. Giles finds blood on the staircase, because he puts his hand down and picks his hand back up, and he's like, oh shit. I love Giles for this because he's resourceful himself and knows he needs to weapon up, and he fashions himself a stake from the fucking stairs and goes to check the box at the ready, which is empty, following a trail of blood onto the floor to the kitchen where we talked about earlier, finding Hobson laying dead on the counter, blood smeared all over the place, and obviously showing that they had a big feeding frenzy in there. I think it's interesting because when Giles quickly vacates the place, he's very visually disturbed by what he's seen, and he holds his mouth and like kind of like almost holds it as if he's about to heave, like he's about to vomit. And I was like, ooh, that's an interesting little take for Anthony Head to have put out in his performance. But also as a watcher and as a person that's seen all the stuff, you've done dealt with Igon, and you all saw Dead Bodies, that episode, and this, that, and the other, and you're gonna almost vomit on like the scene that you just saw here. And sometimes it's just, I guess, a visceral reaction that might take you back in the moment. I like it because it just adds another element of the horror. It's like the horror, it's scary. Makes this episode scary. Outside on the streets, Buffy walks home, getting catcalled by men, but ignoring them, showing us how powerless she feels, hating on herself for not letting Angel walk her home. We were talking during that part of it, though, but she also like says to herself, she's like, oh, no, Angel, you don't have to walk me home. I'm okay. Like, I can do this, blah, blah, blah. You probably caught that in your second watch.
This morning, and I caught that, and I was laughing at her because I was like, this would be me.
But that's also kind of mirroring how Xander was acting whenever he went out and like, I gotta go out to the cemetery and get myself really dead back in Revelations. And then she hears humming, noting that it's a turnoff, and she likes guys who can remember the lyrics, turning to bump directly into vampire Kralik, who grabs her, saying his mind isn't what it used to be because he can't remember the lyrics anymore. I like his like play on it over what she just said. She struggles and asks to be let go. He toys with her, saying like, you didn't say please. He tries to bite her, and she breaks free, ripping out of her jacket. And that's sad. She was struggling so hard to get away from him, and the only way she is because he was gripping her fucking red coat, and it pulls off of her, and that's how she breaks free from him. Otherwise he would have got her ass right there. And then obviously once she does think like, oh, I'm in the clear, I can now flee. No, she turns around and fucking sees vampire Blair chilling right there. And then she runs down the street screaming for help, making it down a long alley that's fenced off, struggling now to climb it. The vamps gaining on her, crawling underneath it. Like that's what she does. She like hops through the little fucking cut in the fence at the bottom, and he's like struggling to get through it too. Thankfully, when she's in the street screaming at cars to stop, very scary because no one stops for her. Everybody knows what goes on in this town. Like, we ain't stopping for you screaming and wailing your arms, bitch. Like, we ain't trying to get you up. If that was Cordelia passing, she's like, not my car, they're not invited. But regardless, Giles obviously pulls up to collect her in the nick of time, and her having to beat Blair off at the door as Kralik watches them drive off, and he's like, fuck, there goes my meal. But some things I want to point out about this scene: when Blair climbs that fence, like, one, for Buffy herself, when she goes to hoist herself, we know that we've seen Buffy scale a fence and flip over like it's nothing. Remember in the first season when Xander fell over the fence right after Buffy just hopped that shit? Like, Buffy's trying to pull herself up, and she can't even climb a fence. I know, that's how weak she feels, because she has no muscle, like natural muscle anatomy at this point, because that medicine is working on a human level as well. So it's depleting any natural muscle tissue that she has. So she has to crawl through that. But when Blair climbs the fence, he grabs the fucking barbed wire at the top like it's nothing, and it's a real perfect reminder that a vampire doesn't care about harming themselves if it means staying in the chase. You know what I mean? Like, he grabs barbed wire like it's nothing and hops that fence. I'm like, damn, his hands is all cut up, but apparently if it's Blair, it'll heal in 2 seconds. This is a new vampire too, so you can really feel the bloodlust that he's got trying to help get her, because Kralik's basically sent Blair off to go chase her. You know what I mean? We don't see him running up behind her. And I've always thought that was such a cool detail for Blair. But on top of that, the whole scene is just dripping with suspense. Such a sharp contrast to the Buffy that we usually see. We get to see her run down and basically have a chase scene that we've never seen Buffy have in this show. And it's a sharper contrast, like I was about to say, to reminding me of Sarah Michelle Gellar's other horror work, like her chase scene up the stairs and out of the house in Scream 2, like her chase scene and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Obviously, we iconically know because we've stood in the same place that happened. But it just like shines here that she's so vulnerable, like she's getting hunted, like all that energy is present. And I'm sure that they had to have fun tapping back into those roots for her, like Sarah, to like go back and be like, oh, I did this in Scream 2, I did this and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, it's so second nature for her to play a victim, but this is the first time on her show where she's typically the like not the person that's not being aggressed, like and fought after in the same way she usually can fight back, and now she can't. So I was like, ooh, this is interesting to get to see Buffy channel genuine distress and make us believe that she's fearing for her life, because Sarah gets that across in her acting in here too. And that's why I love this episode a lot more, because of the contrast that we get to see from normal Buffy. Well, now safe at the library, Buffy cries to Giles about how she can't just be a person, and then she speaks the title of the episode to tell him that she can't be helpless. Second time she said helpless with Angel earlier, but here it comes off a little different, pleading to him that they need to find out what's happening. Giles pulls out the drug box and presents it to her, telling her of this organic compound meant to suppress the adrenals and relax muscle tissue. Oh, well, at least it's organic. It's organic, so we're fine.
It's given to the Slayer once if she reaches her 18th birthday. The Slayer is disabled and then entrapped with a vampire foe whom she must defeat in order to pass the test.
Buffy grasps the reality of her watcher doing this to her. He tells her of Zachary Kralik, who was an awful piece of work as a human long before he became a vampire.
The vampire you were to face has escaped. His name is Zachary Kralik. As a mortal, he murdered, tortured more than a dozen women before he was committed to an asylum for the criminally insane.
This is where I pose the question, like, more for just food for thought of, like, how did they get their hands on this dude? Like, how long has he been a vampire? Did the council nab him and keep him for this moment? Did they create him themselves? Did they be like, let's sire this crazy lunatic of a murderer? Yeah. You know what I mean? Get him out of the insane asylum that he's being held in and then make him a vampire so that way he's more of a threat toward... Like, there's so many unanswered questions, and I wouldn't put it past the council if they did the second Doctor. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, because obviously he's like somebody that can be expendable at that point. So, like, whatever, but obviously I'm sure he was turned into a vampire because they said that he killed his mother, so that's not necessarily what happened, but I was just like, food for thought. That's kind of interesting, even though that's not the case now that I'm like having that epiphany. Forgot he had his whole history, but I'm like, how did he get turned into a vampire? Who did he meet? Did he just wrong place at wrong time? Like, or Drusilla, because like any of these bitches that are like already fucked up in their head, they're like, or Angelus, if he had met him, he would have been like, ooh, you'd be a perfect monster. True. You know what I mean? Based on your history. Giles gets the box then thrown at him while his back is turned, and thankfully Buffy doesn't have focus and is an emotional wreck at the moment, so she misses what definitely would have hit Giles' head if she had been herself. Now standing before him crying, calling him a bastard, crying to him about leaving her in the dark about this when she's been asking. He expresses he wanted to tell her, but because of protocol and the council, he clearly couldn't. He tells her further of the coordinated process of the test, culminating in getting Buffy to that bando, and the show's way of sneaking in how Buffy knows where to go later, because he was like, I was to direct you to Prescott Lane, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, just like any other time, we gotta like let Buffy know where the address is so that we understand how she gets there later, because you know Kralik did not write the address on the back of that fucking photo that he left for Buffy. Over the next stretch of dialogue, Giles grows a bit emotional when telling her that she's safe now, with the test invalidated at this point, and how he will deal with Kralik, trying to comfort Buffy, who wants him nowhere near her. She is over this because Giles has tried to poison her, and she doesn't know who he is anymore. Very understandable. And this is where we get our comic relief, because Cordelia comes in breaking up the moment for school reasons, and being Cordy and what she's assessing visually, she assumes that the world's going to end again, and if so, she's not going to be doing the schoolwork. Buffy goes to leave, and Giles tells her that she can't walk home alone, Buffy reaffirming and reminding him that, you know, just 2 seconds ago she said, I don't know who you are. Cordelia having that useful tension breaking comic relief dialogue to joke about how something must have taken Buffy's memory and how this is Giles. Because saying words slower like Xander to Ampada will help people understand English or memory or whatever triggering thing this is trying to happen. I'm like, oh my God, Cordelia, calm down. But Buffy knows who she is, and she asks her to drive her home, and Cordelia politely and respectfully agrees, and they head out together. I really like the moment for Cordelia here. Whenever she tells her that, she's like, Cordelia, could you please drive me home? And then she's like, of course. Like, her whole energy of being jokey and comic relief kind of changes. She's like, oh wait,
this is
like,
serious.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote in my notes, like, I just feel so bad for Buffy. Like, being the Slayer has given her the most awful life in a lot of ways. And I'm not even talking about like the normal day-to-day, because she really does fight to keep that intact. I'm talking about the journey that comes with her chosen status. This is like the second time that she's had to stand in that library and feel betrayed by her watcher. Only now it lands a bit harder, because let's face it, like, that's exactly what this is, a betrayal. And that's what it's like presented to her and us as the viewer through Giles. It's not about trust truly either. It's a complete violation of her autonomy, which we've been speaking on, her personal space, her body, drugging her, stripping away her rights, making her vulnerable. It's invasive and cruel. And I get why Giles says it's an act of cruelty, and it echoes Prophecy Girl. Back then she cried to Giles about being 16 and not wanting to die, and that was a betrayal more of on a cosmic level, because the universe was setting her up with that, with it being the prophecy that she was supposed to die. That wasn't on Giles' control, but she felt kind of betrayed because she overheard him reading from that book, and like he hadn't given her that information. Like, it's like I said, the second time her having this moment in the library where she's crying and pleading to her watcher and feeling like the world has set her up. But here in Helpless, that betrayal is more intimate because it comes from the person who's supposed to be protecting her and guiding her. And we've been speaking on that. But both those moments in the show just show how much being the Slayer cost her, how heavy and unfair her journey is. And then you add the fact on this, the whole ordeal is framed as a test. The final act seeing if she can survive against a vampire with her powers being stripped away. And like I keep saying, it's no wonder Giles calls it archaic. The extremity of it says everything about the Watchers Council, how they're very cold and detached and willing to sacrifice the girl for the Slayer. And honestly, that's another brutal truth that Quentin lays out. He's like, this isn't just about Buffy. They've done this to every Slayer for centuries. And if a girl doesn't survive, it forces a new activation, meaning they've got someone new, someone younger, maybe more focused, maybe easier to control. And in my mindset, kind of puts it as more of a systematic versus personal approach that the council takes, which kind of makes it even uglier on their side because they're doing it because, like I said, like if they can't control the Slayer, or if like maybe she's been spinning off a rocker, they just like do this test or like get her killed. And then they've got a new girl that's probably 16, which I'll talk about again later, like that they can control easier, But overall, I just wanted to like stop like in this beat and say that like my heart really hurts for Buffy, because as I'm like writing out and analyzing and doing all this, I'm sitting here with these thoughts and I'm like this bitch has a fucked up life, and we already knew this. We've talked about this numerous amounts of times. It's just another time we have to add another layer to the poor onion that is Buffy. And the price that she's forced to pay for what her duty is and what she's had to deal with and like still continues and will continue to deal with. The Slayer call-in really isn't just lonely, as we've kept saying. Like it's very, very brutal. I wrote also about like the emotion from Giles here too. Him telling Buffy that like he's like, I'll deal with Kralik and I will do whatever to earn back your trust. The fact that he's already putting it on the table that he needs to make amends for what he's done is very important. And something I also thought about that I've never really thought about before, I was like, I wonder if Buffy sat silent in the car with Cordelia on the way home, or if the two like get engaged in conversation. And she's like, so what's going on? What's wrong? And she's like, oh, I don't have my Slayer powers, and there's a test that's going to kill me.
And Giles
like I wonder if she I wonder if she shared that information with Cordelia.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Obviously, we don't get that scene, but I was sitting there thinking about that, and I was like, I'm curious.
I know. I doubt it, because I feel like then, I don't know, well, who knows? But I feel like she is aware enough to know that if she shared that information, that everyone would look at Giles differently, despite of the motive. You know what I mean? And you couldn't leave like exactly that part out of the story, being that the whole premise is you don't have your powers. So like, I don't know. She probably just made Cordelia talk about herself the whole time, which we all know she loves.
Cordelia probably did talk about herself the whole time. I don't know. I would like to think, though, because of the sadness that she sees Buffy portraying in this, and then how she's like, of course I'll do that for you. Either they just stored home in silence, or like possibly they taught her, she tried to make Buffy feel better because she got on her level for a second, was like, you're clearly upset, I'm not going to be making jokes or doing something like that. I think she may, if anything, just gave Buffy a peace of mind on the way home.
Yeah,
too.
or maybe
like,
Buffy
not for
could have
anything
also
important,
like blamed it on her dad bailing on her birthday, and that's why she's sad. And then Giles is like too busy,
for sure.
so like now she has no one.
Yeah, too layered. Knowing Buffy, she probably did redirect it and be like, "Oh, it's nothing. I just hurt myself." And
she's like, "Angel's a vamp again, and he's killing everyone." So I'm.
Oh fuck! Yes, exactly. Oh my god. Okay. Anyways, let's move along. In our next scene, we get a quick trip to the Summers house where we find Joyce is tricked outside, and we really channel the Red Riding Hood vibes since Kralik has used Buffy's jacket to sniff out her home with. I was curious where he got Buffy's address, and I was like, "Oh, he sniffs her jacket after she drives off with Giles, so he follows her scent home." Basically, again, mirroring Red Riding Hood, which we'll talk about in metaphor. That was very clever of him to use that jacket, also to lure Joyce outside and make her think that he was Buffy laying on the porch like that, but clearly it wasn't. I was like, damn, Joyce can't catch a break this season. Like, she's kidnapped now. Last episode, she was under the influence of dead kids, and now she's fucking getting kidnapped by a crazy maniacal vampire. Like, fuck. And then Buffy obviously comes home too after giving them flowers, what I call a fuck off that she finds on the counter, because she like slings them motherfuckers right into the trash can off the counter. I'm like, ooh, damn, she's fed up. She's pissed. Like, she's not happy. And obviously once she gets to the front door, she noticed that it's wide open, and Kralik has fucking quick taped. I don't know where he found the tape at, or if he brought that over there, how he stuck that damn photo to the thing, but he all stuck it on the fucking edge of the door frame that he could get to. because obviously he wasn't invited inside. And the photo shows I don't want to keep saying photo because I want to make very specific that it's a Polaroid, because then you went into a joke and be like, where the fuck does motherfucker get a Polaroid camera from? Like, it's kind of funny because before you said that, I wrote in my notes, who gave this man a Polaroid camera? And like, it's kind of scary because in the picture he's like behind Joyce, like smiling, like I just said a minute ago, maniacally, and he like got Joyce by the fucking throat and she looks terrified. Like, imagine Buffy seeing this damn picture. She's like, fuck. This clearly also forces Buffy to go upstairs and overpack a large weapons bag that she can barely carry when she goes to leave and get her mother. Another cool element, still forcing Buffy to go there, because now she still has to go basically do this test because her mother's at fucking stake now. Let that sink in. Not only was Buffy supposed to be deemed safe now, it makes sense now later why she says, you set that thing loose on me and it came after my mother. Like, their whole operation, as I forgot to mention, went horribly wrong. Like, Giles said it in the dialogue earlier, but like, the whole operation for the Watchers Council, once Kralik was freed from the bogs, it went to shit from that. Like, it's not in the way it was supposed to be. It's not in working order anymore. And now Joyce is just as extendable to the cause as poor Buffy. And you know, if they had both been killed by Kralik, the council would have probably just covered Joyce up some way to keep up pretenses. And we already get the idea that they hold a lot of power when it comes to the system, because they're like supposed to be the patriarchal hand and like the shit show for like cis fucking awful men and all the things that come with that when it comes to the agency of others. But what a big old joke from the universe to basically tell Buffy, oh, you still have to go to that house. More is at stake now, and you still have to go through this literal hell of a test. Like, that's so fucked up. And I also wanted to note, Buffy is back in what I remember, and I pointed this out, Becoming Buffy podcast termed this the overalls of pain, because just like at the end of Becoming Part 2, when she walks off from seeing her friends to go get on the bus, we see that she's wearing the overalls. So we know that Buffy's feeling lower in herself. And here she gets them back, channeling the similar energy because she's weak. She's not feeling like herself. So she puts on overalls to go do this task. Like, and that's why I pointed it out to you. I was like, morning outfit. Literally. No, it's the overalls of pain. It's just interesting how they like put her back in this perspective of being like, overalls, this will be like what Buffy wears when she's not,
which is funny because Willow just be wearing overalls on any given Tuesday.
Literally the 90s. We got the overalls and the Polaroids.
I love it.
Back at the bando, find out that Kralik has some fucking problems too, apparently because of his Freudian mother logic, which seems warranted of his accusations being correct, because we find him telling Joyce about his mother as he flashes numerous pictures of her in the bando basement. Like, just taking picture
I'm like,
after
he's got a lot of
picture.
damn time on his hands too. Like, Joyce didn't know she was going to go in for a photo shoot today.
And it's creepy too, because he asked, he's like, can I call you mother? And I was like, ooh, mommy issues, but again, very warranted. And I was like, we'd probably be good friends with him, because he makes the comment about how his mom like to use scissors. He's like, you wouldn't believe what she liked to do with those. And I was like, cut people out her life. I was like,
including him.
Be friends with her. Yeah. Anyways, poor Joyce is probably petrified as fuck in this moment, and we see her that she's tied and gagged to the chair too while he's doing all this, because beforehand we just see him flashing pictures and talking. We don't know who he's talking to, but then duh. And again, fairly so, because Kralik voices to her,
but she's dead to me now, mostly because I killed and ate her, but also because I know I won't be alone much longer. I'll have your daughter. I won't kill her, I'll just make her like me. Different. She'll go to sleep. And when she wakes up, your face will be the first thing she eats.
He's like, I've got a problem with mothers. And he's like, I'm aware. That's fucking terrifying, like saying that like he's gonna kill her and make her a vampire, and then Joyce is gonna be the first face that she eats when she reawakens. Like, and that's sadly what would happen had he turned Buffy. Like, that would have played out exactly that way, and then he would have had himself a little girlfriend, because now he's interested in having a fucking girlfriend. The fuck. Well, we clip to the front door and we see Buffy entering and immediately showing her brilliant mind by wedging that stake in the open door. Love her for that. That's already cluing us into that she's still very resourceful. She drops off her bag on the couch and has that crossbow in hand as well, and she wanders through the house checking rooms, the vampire Blair alerting her that someone's inside with her door stake tactic. Again, perfect. But also points out Buffy is still up against 2 vampires, not just one. She was originally just supposed to be up against Kralik in this house. She has 2 vampires to fucking worry about. So this is more fucked up than past Slayer tests. Giles is visited quickly at the library by Quentin. Giles telling him about how he told Buffy and how there will be no test, but Quentin voicing how Giles has acted in opposition of the council's orders and disagrees, informing Giles that his Slayer entered the field, aka the Bando, about 10 minutes ago. Giles storming out as Quentin tries to block him from going, but he isn't in service to the business at this point, expressing that physically before leaving. I find that very interesting because, like, when he jacks Quentin up and was like, basically the final fuck you to the council, this is where Giles kind of sealed his fate. Once they found out that he told Buffy and he was like leaving against orders, this is what sealed what's to come in just a little bit, obviously, aka him getting fired. But also the fact that Quentin, and I wanted to make it a point because I didn't write it in my notes, but I thought about it while we were watching it. He's talking about, well, I was just returning to the Bando when I saw your Slayer entering. Where have you been all episode? Why are you never at the Bando? You're at the Bando when you're talking to Giles or when you're instructing these guys to paint up everything and like, board up shit. But like, where are you at? Like, are you at the coffee shop down the street having tea or something? Are you at your Airbnb that you're staying at in town? Like, where are you? Because you have not been nowhere around. He's like, I'm staying out of sight, out of mind, because I ain't got no time for this. He's like, I ain't got no time for people to get killed. But then also in this scene too, Giles lets him know that the whole fucking test has now gone to shit. And he's like, I know Blair has been killed and turned, and that Hobson is dead. And he's just like, oh well, still the test must continue.
I know.
Like, what the fuck? It's crazy.
That's probably like the last thing he expected to.
Absolutely. Well, Blair at the Bando moves in on Buffy, but she hears him and spins around, shooting the bolt at him as it sails by his body into the wall. And I wrote my notes originally before we watched the episode together when I developed the script. I was like, Courtney, now you can say that she don't know how to use a crossbow.
I had the same thought.
I was dying. I was like, damn, now we're going to be on the fucking kick of Courtney being like, yeah, but remember that one time?
But the sad reality is she looked even more prepared to use it this time than she did the initial time I made fun of her.
Yeah, for real. Well, he grabs her and she breaks free with a foot stomp, running off through the house and attempts to grab her bag, cut off by him again, tipping a bookcase onto him and beating him with a nearby lamp, rendering him briefly unconscious, getting her bag and nervously moving through the house. I noticed here we revisit a sound in the score we last heard in Passion. You hear the sort of like finger snaps effect. I'll put the clip in here so y'all can do the comparison between it.
You know what I hate most about these things? They're so damn fragile. Must be that shoddy gypsy craftsmanship, huh?
This is the same type of sound used in the score when Angelus is taunting Ginny in the classroom after he throws the orb of Thessala at the chalkboard and it smashes. And here we see it compared with similar use. Ginny was helpless to Angel or Angelus in that sequence and fearing for her life, knowing that she was in danger. And here we revisit that sound effect with the music score for this episode when Buffy is helpless and in danger. And I don't know if that was intentional, but I can't help but think that it was, because I find that like really, really cool that they add that. And I really surprised myself for picking up little detail. But once again, the subtle little things that this show slips into here, like I haven't heard those little like snaps. Like it almost like rhythmically, like me just snapping my finger sounds like the cue of the music. But I don't know, it was really cool. And I was like, I like the parallels here, because the only other time we've seen somebody really defenseless was Ginny in the episode. And they had those finger snaps kind of noises. I don't know what tool they're using or what instrument to create those things. It could just be somebody snapping their fingers. But like, I was like, they call back to it here and revisit that sound. I was like, oh, it's so fucking awesome. So if you guys didn't know, now you know. At this point, we hear Kralik whispering from an unknown space, hide and seek. Hide and seek. Which is probably so terrifying for her, just putting her on edge, because usually she has the awareness of where exactly a sound is coming from, and she does not have her normal awareness right now. But of course, that space is his box, which he pops out of, grabbing Buffy by the throat, quoting Little Red Riding Hood lines. I like that as well, too, because it's such a fun twist when he says to bring all the sweets to grandmother's house, and it shows the inside of the weapons bag with all the stakes and crossbows and stuff like that, and Slayer tools. I was like, okay, this is not muffins or bread or whatever the fuck like that shit was in the folklore tale. What if that was really what Little Red Riding Hood was carrying when the wolf got her, whenever she was like out on the loose and stuff like that? You know what I mean? Because obviously he finds her basket in the original story. I haven't heard that story in forever, but I'm like, what if the wolf got slayed by Little Red Riding Hood in the actual folklore? He'd be like, oh fuck, I didn't get to eat fucking grandmother this time. Anyways, he is nasty too, because after trying to bite her, Buffy pulls that little cross out on him, and he uses it to sadistically put it on his put it on his dick as we hear it sizzle some, and he's like, oh yes, this is fucking lit. I love my fucking dick getting burned. I'm like, what the fuck? But okay, dude, we get your insanity at this point. We 100% understand you were not in your fucking right mind. She runs off into the kitchen trying to find a weapon, obviously seeing poor Hobson still in there on the counter, and she doesn't almost throw up. She's just like, all right, I gotta get in and get out. The house grows really quiet too, her trying to move up the stairs as he trips her from below them, like in a little jump scare moment. And this poor girl can't even use a stake right, because whenever he breaks his arm through and like some of those posts that like what Giles broke earlier falls, she's over here trying to swat at his hand, and he's like, it's so comical because he's like doing this in the background and dodging from her, and he's like like it's kind of funny for a second, but then you're like, okay, this actually is scary, not funny. He chases her up the stairs, and obviously when he trips her too, I never noticed it until this watch, that's what busts Buffy's head. I didn't even pay attention before. I thought maybe just somewhere along this fight, maybe when she jumped down the laundry chute, maybe she busted her head and shit, but you actually see the mark now whenever she goes into the room and stuff like that. I'm like, damn, now she's not headbutting vampire, she's headbutting the fucking floor, and that shit busted her head immediately. I'm like, her Slayer shit is gone fully at this point. We get another horror-packed suspenseful sequence of her in the hallways, eventually finding a dark room with a fucking one light bulb that she switches on, and the room is covered with hundreds of photos of Joyce. So this motherfucker sat down here for 2 hours taking pictures of Joyce so he could stick them all over. Like, this guy is fucking crazy.
That's what I said. Crazy. He got too much time on his hands, because not only did he photograph Joyce for 2 hours, but then it took him 4 more hours to do all that.
Him and Angelus would have been best friends.
You're probably right. It's probably Angelus.
All this time, that's art, but it takes a certain person with a fucked up psyche to think, oh, I'm gonna do this. You know what I mean? Like,
I
not
know,
just the
and
vampire on top of
Angelus
that.
would be the kind of one to go into an insane asylum and be like, let me pick the craziest bitch out of here.
Yep. So, like,
and
this
those
is the
were my
type of thing
roommates.
that really gets. This is the type of thing that really gets therapists off whenever they like get to psychoanalyze somebody or like really.
Where's
dive
Anna?
into the
Bring her on
psychology
for
of
an
the mind.
episode.
I know, right? We need you to assess Zachary.
We need
Kralik.
to have a therapy corner.
She'll be like, I'll bring him a little bloodshot.
Dev.
Well, Kralik busts through the wall, chasing Buffy back out into the halls, grabbing her to finally try to bite her again. And he almost gets her, but thankfully he has this whole mental problem, and his mind starts doing that whole nervous system crash out shit. And she is able to get away from him with his pills, because he's stupid and pulls them fuckers out. Like, he's gonna try. He's like, can you hold on real quick, little girl? I gotta take a
pause
like,
for the cause.
First of all, no, like, pop her and knock her out real quick so you can take your pills. But whatever. Buffy's smart. She runs down the fucking hallway and sees the open laundry chute at the end and jumps in it. She like doesn't crawl into it. She face first fucking swan dives into that motherfucker, obviously crashing right into the basement with Joyce below. And this is where I said to you, whenever it happened, like when she fell through and she hit that fucking table and the table broke from underneath her, I was like, poor Buffy is going through it. She's getting fucked up this episode. There ain't no way. Like, she had to hit her head again going down there. Like, she all fell on her elbow. Like, your arm is broken at this point, bitch. Joyce gets real excited too. She's like, oh my god, Buffy. He crashes through the door though, like the Kool-Aid man at the top of the fucking stairs. He's like, oh yeah, time to kill the Slayer. He's like, I really need my fucking pills though. He's like, I'm gonna wash it down with some Kool-Aid. since I'm the Kool-Aid man. He gets down there and asks where the fuck his pills are because he's seriously stressing. And Buffy tries to make it by him. And she's smart. She's holding the pill bottle still. Like, it's just, she's trying to guard it. And he grabs them from her. He moves over to take a handful of them. Like, usually he just takes a couple. This motherfucker just downs the fucking bottle. He's like, I got this. But I'm like, what are you going to do? You can't get another prescription. He's like, I'm like, what kind of pharmacy are you going to go to as a vampire and get the medication that you need? Do you know which one it's called? That's a whole thing. But then he drinks his water to wash them down, feeling immediately better, which really lets us know that these pills don't help him do shit. It's like a placebo for him, because
they
them
didn't even
shits
absorb into his bloodstream yet, and he's like, I'm good.
Exactly. And he's a vampire that doesn't really have an actual bloodstream. Like,
maybe that's why.
Well, still, regardless, medicine takes more than 15 seconds to activate, unless a vampire like has a dosage of like 10k milligrams. I don't fucking know. It's wild. Well, he voices to her place in all of this and how she doesn't understand it. But mid-sentence, and ironically, when telling her that she has no idea, realizes that something's off, looking at the cup and then back to Buffy, who smirks and slowly raises the empty holy water vial as he begins to shake vigorously and uncontrollably, shouting a trio of no. Her retorting,
If I was at full Slayer power, I'd be punning right about now.
We get the 2K per holy water slay as he disintegrates to dust. And your face during the sequence, oh my god, like, I don't know what your mom was thinking.
Oh my god,
like, what did you think
so
in the
smart,
moment?
so smart. I think I was confused because I was doing like a mental puzzle in my head, because I'm just like, I missed the part, I think, where he like uses the water obviously to chase his pills down. And so initially, I think when she like held up the little bottle of holy water, I was like, what did she do? Like, in a 5-second interval, she like took all his pills apart and put little drops of holy water in all of them, and like, so I'm like complete. I think that's when I was just like, wait, and I was like, hold on, and I was like, oh wait, okay, no, he'd had to drink water to take the pills, so like that's the whole situation. But yeah, super smart. And obviously, like, when I saw her bring her bag of like weapons and tools, I think there's a little fragment of a scene where you see her put the holy water in like her pocket or something. So it's like the one thing that's not in the bag, with like her 10 steaks and her fucking machete and her AK-47 and whatever else.
And she didn't know to take that either, like, for that specific reason. She didn't know his pills was an option. She was taking that as one extra little like thing to help put space in between
so
them.
I just remembered, like, because any really movie or show likes to do that, where they give you that little like moment and you're like, you gotta remember that.
Yeah, you don't actually see her
so when
do
she
it,
pulled it back out, I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense, like why they stopped even for a momentary second and we're like, pay attention to the holy water,
Yeah. And probably seeing it for the second time, you see him actually drink it and stuff. And I think it's interesting because obviously that's why they put the whole placement of the pills and him being an insane
right. And I put that
person
together.
that has to take them in there.
Exactly.
Hobson and them at the beginning of the episode feeding him with a stick, the water glass to sip down the water and all that stuff to take the pills and all of this, that, and the other. It's very clever, but also this is just fucking Buffy at her best. Like, she's at her worst, but she's at her best because she still had the clever thought to be like, oh, like in the moment too. And the time it took her to shoot down that laundry chute, see her mother down there and understand that she's got his pills and he's asking for them, and see, put contextually in the room together that there's a table there with like a glass for water and all this other stuff, and just like switch the water out with the holy water. So fucking smart. But also we get a really cool, interesting slay because he doesn't dust the same way. It almost like he turns into like wet dust or something and disintegrates versus like a poof like that you would get from a steak. So it's a little bit of a twist on the normal 2K per slay that we see. I don't know. Buffy is so clever here. And I love her so much because even with her saying, like, if I was at full Slayer power, I'd be punning right about now, she's still punning. Like, even though she's not at full Slayer power, like, she just contradicted herself, but also it's like a fun little play. She's like, I would probably have this statement be a lot more zingy if I was not in the position that I am right now. But she's got to feel good. And Buffy moves to help Joyce get untied, confused at why she can't just break the ropes effortlessly right now, because Joyce is like, can't you just? And she's like, not right now. Blair runs in on them, growling, as we see Giles is actually trailing behind him, grabbing at him, clearly having been dealing with him elsewhere in the house. Giles pulls out a stake and gives us the 2K per Giles slay of Blair, Buffy looking at him stunned, which then clips us over to the library where Quentin is congratulating busted head Buffy on passing the exam. That's what I called her.
You've exhibited extraordinary courage and clear-headedness in battle. The council is very pleased.
Do I get a gold star?
I understand that you're upset.
You understand nothing. You set that monster loose and he came after my mother.
You think the test was unfair.
I think you better leave town before I get my strength back.
He better get the fuck out of there, is what she basically said. He tells her the business of fighting a war is not fair, and Giles clarifies that they are waging a war and she's the one fighting it. But this convo is hardly over, Quentin pointing out that she has passed, but he has failed, as the Slayer is not the only one expected to perform in this situation, informing Giles that the council and him have agreed that he should be relieved of his duty as Watcher, and then they fire him. Giles warning what grounds that's based on, and Quentin goes on to clarify.
Your affection for your charge has rendered you incapable of clear and impartial judgment. You have a father's love for the child, and that is useless to the cause. It would be best if you had no further contact with the Slayer.
I'm not going anywhere.
No, well, I didn't expect you would adhere to that. However, if you interfere with the new Watcher, or countermand his authority in any way, you will be dealt with.
You see Buffy's face while he's making this statement to her, and she's over here crying. Not only has she just dealt with this whole trauma of a few days, dealt with the betrayal of Giles, she's also now being like, Giles was actually trying to help me, and I do care for him. He obviously cares for me, because hearing Quentin express this perception shift of like him being like, you clearly have a father's love for the child, and that's not directly beneficial to the cause of the Watcher Slayer dynamic of what we need. So this is why we have to fire you. And now Buffy, on top of this shit show of a few days that she's had, now she's losing her Watcher. Like, she only felt like she already bridged a gap in between them by this betrayal. Now she's physically actually going to lose him. So it sucks. Buffy looks at Giles, obviously with tears in her eyes, through Quentin's assessment, and Giles does indeed care for her immensely. Not only that, he just called that love one of which a father displays. Before leaving, he congrats Buffy once more, who just snarks at him.
Bite me.
Yes. Well, colorful girl.
So funny for a Slayer to say, like, she's obviously dealing with things that bite people all the time, and she's telling him to bite her. But that's also a classic, like, thing for especially girls back in the day to say. Like, you would be like, bite me. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
so
mean? As like a
true.
retort. So I think it's cool how they put that in there. Buffy cries and in pain grabs the rag and the water before her to clean her wounds. Giles moving in to take it from her, kneeling to her to clean her wounds by his own hand. And we all realize what Quentin said was true. So delicately done as a scene. It really brings full circle the relationship that has been forming between Buffy and Giles. And like I keep saying, we'll talk about the council and metaphor in a moment, but this really goes to show that they don't want Giles anymore because he didn't follow orders, and he has this bond with Buffy now that surpassed the professional and ethical space he's supposed to be in with her. And it really goes to show the council fires him because they've lost the ability to control him as well overall. I note that because Quentin says you have a father's love for the child, and that's useless to the cause. So it's a fucked up scenario all around. So not only did Giles seal his fate when he like outlasted Quentin and defied orders and telling Buffy, he also showed this aspect of his care for Buffy. And they're like, you know, even without all that other stuff, you clearly have pushed past the threshold of ethical barriers when it comes to business side of relationships, you know?
Well, they can't trust him to do his job well either when he's so emotionally like blurred.
Which is kind of fair. And I part ways do agree with that. It'd be like if we had a client like we were seeing for massage and we started having feelings for them or something. Ethically, we can't take them on as a client anymore. Or other situations like whenever somebody's in a mentor role to somebody, and then like whether that be growing feelings or even if it's platonic feelings, you have to stay in a certain mindset that says this is about the duty. This is about like what we're supposed to be servicing. And once that falls past the spectrum of wherever boundaries are for that perspective and for that process, then you can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? It then has to defer it to somebody else. So it does make sense, but also like there's those little tweakings of the council being the council that will.
I think it's no different than like being a superior in a position of like anything, you know, and you're not supposed to date someone who's like you're their boss and they're your employer, you're their professor and they're your student. You know, it's like you don't. There's this emotional like I said earlier about Giles, there's this emotional empathy that he just naturally has. I think for all of them in the gang, you know, not just Buffy, but of course Buffy more so than anyone because he works so closely alongside her with everything and he is her watcher specifically. But he cares about all of them just the same, you know, and he wants to protect them. And he is like a fatherly figure in the setting of the school for them specifically as a group of friends. So It's hard. I can't imagine his position to have to completely cut your emotions off and do a job like that when it comes to having to physically invade someone's space and all these other things that are kind of like up to ethical question. But I feel like, yeah, it's difficult to see Giles in this position, especially when you see him at the end lose everything because of it. So
Yeah. Well, our final scene takes us to the Summers' home on a sunny day where Buffy and her friends make PB&Js with her mother. Willow is stressing about the firing of Giles way too much and how Buffy, what Joyce calls cleverly getting rid of Kralik, because she's like, oh, you tell it better, honey. Like, she's like, Mom, don't cut me off. I've already had my thunder stolen all episode. I am Monica Geller. Thankfully, Giles is still a librarian employed at the school, though, so he won't be going anywhere, and Buffy notes nothing will change. Apparently, especially also, her gut-wrenching birthdays full of misery and horror are now a continuation. She's like, I kept up my tradition. Noting she will feel better when she has her strength returned, and now we see that she can't even get the jar of peanut butter open, and Xander's like, let me do this for you. Sometimes you just need a big, strong man, and offers his assistance, which then we see that he can't even do, so we're going to leave that at that. And we fade to black as we hear Xander's voice asking for Willow to give him a hand. He's like, hey, Willow, give me a hand with that. And here endeth the episode. All right, I'm just going to jump right into themes and metaphors. Helpless is Buffy's ultimate coming-of-age horror story, disguised as a birthday episode. Her 18th birthday, which should mark independence and freedom, instead forces her into vulnerability, betrayal, and the realization that adulthood isn't what it's cracked up to be. The Cruciamentum, the ancient Slayer rite of passage, strips her of her powers, leaving her to face a deranged vampire with nothing but her wits. It's the perfect metaphor for turning 18. Suddenly, the protections of childhood are gone, and the world expects you to navigate danger on your own. Thematically, the episode is all about helplessness. We see Buffy grapple with fear, suddenly feeling small in a world that has always seemed manageable with Slayer strength. But what makes the story more powerful is how it reframes strength itself. Buffy doesn't survive because of her power. She survives because she's clever, resourceful, and determined. That's the core of her identity, and this test proves that she is more than the Slayer mantle. Then there's the betrayal. Giles' role cuts deeper than the Council's cold tradition because he's her father figure. His secrecy and manipulation reflect that universal teenage moment when you realize authority figures, parents, teachers, guardians, etc., aren't perfect, and worse, sometimes they can hurt you. But in true Buffy fashion, it's not all about despair. His choice to comfort her and ultimately reject the Council shows that love and loyalty mean more than rigid duty, and that moment cements him as family, not just a watcher. Woven through it all is the tension between individuality and institutional control. The Watchers Council sees Buffy as a weapon to test, not as a person to protect. Her defiance and survival are acts of rebellion against that system, and proving she defines herself on her own terms. It mirrors how so many institutions, whether it's school systems, hazing rituals, or even corporate ladders, manufacture brutal trials that are less about growth and more about obedience. And the message here is survive our cruelty and you've earned the right to keep going. And if you don't, well, you were never fit to begin with. It's an impossible dehumanizing standard. What makes Buffy different is that she pushes back. She doesn't survive the test. She exposes the cruelty of it. And when Giles chooses her over the Council, it highlights the contrast. Compassion is framed as weakness by the institution, but in reality, it's strength. That rejection of cold tradition is part of what makes Buffy such a revolutionary Slayer. Helpless isn't just about Buffy losing her powers. It's about what happens when the people who should protect you betray you, when childhood armor falls away, and when you are forced to stand alone. As painful as it is, it's also a defining step in Buffy's journey into adulthood, vulnerable, betrayed, tested, yet still victorious. Beautiful, beautiful. I said I wanted to talk about it. Obviously, this episode codes some Little Red Riding Hood energy into it. Something I love about Helpless is the way that it weaves this dark fairy tale vibe. And this is the second episode in a row we get back-to-back fairy tale lore. Obviously, it's more directed in last episode with Gingerbread and the kids. Hansel and Gretel's story. This one kind of takes elements from Little Red Riding Hood and put in here. Kralik's lines are straight from the story. He's like, come to the dark of the woods, talking about if you stray from the path, you will lose your way, like brought all these goods to grandmother's house. It puts it there, and even visually, Buffy's wearing the red hooded jacket in this episode, which suddenly makes her look like the classic girl in the woods, vulnerable, exposed, and completely alone. The red isn't just a costume choice. It's very symbolic to her vulnerability, the blood, and the danger of the test, and of course, the step into adulthood. Kralik becomes the wolf, lurking taunting, preying on Buffy's fear instead of her strength. And the way he hides in her red coat, it's almost like he's consuming part of her identity, wearing it as a pervasive trophy, classic predator energy at that. The story's comparison works on deeper levels too. Like Red Riding Hood, Buffy is stepping from the safe path of childhood into the woods of adulthood, facing danger that she can't fully control. But here's the twist: unlike the fairy tale, Buffy doesn't need a huntsman to save her. She survives and wins because of her brains, her courage, and her ingenuity. She's the hero of her own story, which makes Red Riding Hood, reference-wise, feel perfect for Buffy, who is, terrified, hunted, but ultimately unstoppable in this episode. Because even in the Red Riding Hood story, she defeats the wolf as well. She uses cunning and wits to trick the wolf in the story. So I love that they did the imaging and the little parallel for the story. Like, the show is just unmatched when it comes to that type of stuff. And then finally, I'll end metaphor with Mark Field's notes. He calls back to Homecoming and Cordelia's face down with Lyle Gorge, calling that episode necessary in that moment for Helpless, as it was telling us that Buffy had non-Slayer attributes that she could use to face challenges as a person like Cordelia did, and it wasn't just limited to her Slayer side. And then I found it interesting the way that he noted the Watchers Council. He said, the Cruciamentum is useful for controlling the Slayer. It seems well designed to eliminate a Slayer who becomes too independent, since another will be called, and the Watchers Council doesn't need any particular Slayer. It can simply assert its authority over a newly chosen one, and she may very well be younger and less confident in her ability, thus more willing to defer to the Council's authority. The whole test seeming to perpetuate the Council rather than make the Slayer better in any meaningful way, which is what I was kind of alluding to earlier when I was saying, like, they could just make another Slayer. They could just like say, well, we need a new one because this one's not following orders or whatever.
Process for them.
Yep. So it lets you know that the Council's got some like systematic more ways of doing things versus like a controlled normal like perspective of being like, hey, like, we want to give you this test. No, we're going to secretly give you this test to like put you into all this. It's a whole
and hope
a whole
you die
problem. This will not be the last time that we see the Council.
Lovely.
Just put that out there for you now. Some Slayerette predictions.
I figured as much.
Some Slayerette actualizations. I don't know. Buffy fun facts for this episode. David Fury revealed that the name Zachary Kralik came from his own nephew's name. And also, he said that the original idea for the episode included Buffy being drugged by the Council and hallucinating, imagining her friends and family as vampires. But they said that that was too close to the premise of the wish. So he chose to like scrap that. And also, Christine Sutherland said that she couldn't stand the vampire makeup. So she didn't want to like do the whole makeup thing. Angel gave Buffy the sonnets from the Portuguese by Elizabeth Barrett Browning for her birthday, and it was originally published in 1850 in a 2-volume publication entitled Poems. It contains the famous poem, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways, and this poem specifically is referred to in season 1, episode 3, Witch, whenever Amy says, oh, how do I love thee, let me count thy ways, like, or whatever the quote is. And that wraps up our Buffy fun facts. All right, let's get into our final slays.
Final slays.
Final slays, Slayers, Helpless. What are your quotes from this episode?
The first one is when Buffy says to Giles, if someone were free, they would take their daughter or student or Slayer, just because I think it's so cute that she's like trying to, desperately hint at Giles while he's ignoring the shit out of her. But another one is where Buffy asks Willow, how is Amy the rat? And Willow responds with, good, she loves her new exercise wheel. And then my last one is when Giles is talking to Quentin from the Watchers Council, and he's like, interestingly, I don't give a rat's ass about the Council's orders.
Yeah. Very defiant. We love this for Giles. Giles is like, y'all don't know about Ripper. I'll tell you.
True.
Mine are from the sequence at the beginning in the cold open where Buffy's fighting that vampire, and after he falls down the slide, he's like, I'll kill you for that. And she's like, for that? What were you trying to kill me for before? I've always loved that one. And then also like the classic quote for the crystals where she's like, how do you know if someone's aura is dirty? Somebody but come by with a finger and write wash me on it. Like, so Buffy. And then when Buffy was talking with Angel and she says something like, there's a chance my calling may be a wrong number. Like it's a phone ringing or something and it's got the wrong number. I thought it was a fun little play on words. And of course, again, Buffy just saying stuff that like just comes in her fucking mind. Like she's very full of wit like we are ourselves, and like the way she retorts. A final one obviously being the one from the end whenever she says, if I was at full Slayer power, I'd be punning right about now. Just because that's her like sticking her middle finger up to Kralik and being like, bye bitch. I love how I have to flip you off on the camera to make it the effect. Like,
I get it.
Who'd you award Shining Slayer to?
Obviously Buffy, for still doing the damn thing with or without her powers. So
Agreed. That's mine too. I was like, Slayer or not, she got that shit. But Weekly Wiggins, mine was Kralik. Every ounce of him, because he's fucking scary and a lunatic.
So true. Mine were random and all over the place, and I surprisingly had a few. But the first one was Buffy's dad bailing on her birthday. The second one was Joyce reading the letter from Buffy's dad without permission. Because I'm like, number one, she's 18 now. So was that addressed to you or no? Because I don't think it said Joyce and Buffy. It probably just said happy birthday, Buffy. But anyway, moving on. Giles drugging Buffy, basically, obviously. And clearly, I called him the vamp in a box before I picked up on his name. And the dude's cat calling Buffy, and then Giles getting fired. Those were my weekly wigs.
I love it. Oh my god, that's a lot. I did not even think about Buffy's mom, Joyce, opening up her damn
Like,
mail.
what the hell?
Like, she's like, it's
she's
all
just
there
getting
in
her
the car.
privacy completely invaded this episode.
That's so funny. That Slade moment. Do we agree on what the top moment possibly is, or do you think we have
Mine
different
was the
ones?
holy water. Like, what else can it be?
Mine too.
Yeah. I did. I
Yeah.
initially was going to give a little partial credit to Giles for like being the one car that comes and stops for Buffy, because that was kind of like Slade and like a save the day kind of way. But then he ruined it by having to admit it to her that it's been him that's drugging her. So that kind of 86 that right out of the equation.
I forgot to say it while we were at that scene, but think about the fact of that too. Like, I know I was making jokes about like Buffy out here flagging her arms down and people in this town being like, I ain't stopping for nothing in this town. Like, I ain't got time for that. Like, think about how often that goes down in this town though, or just anywhere where there are vampires are and you're getting chased and you're trying to flag people down and you're in danger, actually in true danger, and how many people just turn the blind eye or like don't want to help you or anything like that. Like, I mean, honestly, at this point in life, like after all the horror movies I've seen and stuff, I probably wouldn't stop for somebody trying to flag me down, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It always ends in something bad from what a horror movie shows. So I ain't trying to be a part of what's going on with you. That ain't my story. I'm so sorry. Like, it depends. I'll help you if you come running into my shop, or like, you know what I mean? If I'm at work and you come running in talking about I need help, lock the doors. I mean, I ain't got no choice. You in the building now, but like, it's a whole thing. But think about how many people run all over town and get killed like on a nightly basis, like being chased by vampires and trying to get away and running down an alley and being like, help, 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 and basically having the same outcome Sarah Michelle Gellar has in I Know What You Did Last Summer, where she gets killed in the tires when she's almost to safety. Like, people like knowing that you're almost out and you don't get out. It's fucked up. Sunnydale, the place to be. All right, Slayer at predictions. The next episode is entitled The Zeppo.
Yeah, you are right. I'm not going to have any idea about what the fuck that means.
At all. You will learn the Zeppo is actually like it points to something, and it is a person. So it's like a play. But I also told you originally, and also because of our guest that we have joining us, it's a Xander-centric episode. So
well, that means probably another full list of weekly wigs ahead are my Slayer rep predictions.
No, it's a really fun episode. It's quirky and funny. It kind of like, it's instead of it being a serious episode like we've gotten like with the Pack, and Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered was really fun too. It had a lot of like subversive stuff going on that we had to like call Xander out for, you know what I mean? But for what he did in that episode. But this one's a little bit more of a fun play, and it actually puts us in the mind's eye of like watching the episode through Xander's eyes in a way. Okay. So it's going to be really, really fun. That's your breadcrumb. Yes. All right, you guys, that's our coverage of Helpless. Thanks, listeners, for joining us for this one, as it definitely gives us a lot to think about, and we've clearly talked about a lot. What do you all think of the Cruciamentum and the way Buffy had to go through it powerless? Does this change how you see the Watchers Council now that we know what kind of test they put their Slayers through? And where are you landing on Giles here, torn between duty and the love that he clearly has for Buffy? What are your thoughts? Share with us. Let us know. We always love hearing your perspective. Be sure to join us next week when we'll have a special guest back on the pod. I say specifically because we have Frank 𝗏𝗏 coming back. He will be here with us to dive into the Zeppo. So we will catch you guys then.
You will be safe now, I promise you. Now, whatever I have to do to deal with Kralik and to win back your trust.
You stuck a needle in me. You poisoned me. What's going on? Oh, God, is the world ending? I have to research a paper on Bosnia for tomorrow, but if the world's ending, I'm not going to bother.
You can't walk home alone, Buffy. It isn't safe.
don't know you.
Did something take her memory? He's Giles. Giles. He hangs out here a lot.
Cordelia, could you please drive me home?
Of course. But if the world doesn't end, I'm gonna need a note.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And if you happen to love abandoned places but prefer them vampire-free, check out Echoes of Elsewhere, an urban exploration podcast, where I interview urban explorers about the eerie spaces they uncover, anything from haunted schools, forgotten mansions, and tunnels that probably don't lead to the Hellmouth. From history to mysteries, tips and tricks of the trade, I dive into all things Urbex. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.